Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пихцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 588 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And I'm glad to see you all survived the emergency alert test. And also, have you heard that Russia's Black Sea Fleet is on the move?
And the Russian Black Sea Fleet has abandoned the port of Sevastopol as of today, according to Western analysts that have now taken a look at the footage and information that we've been looking at, and they've now also come to the same conclusion as well. The Black Sea Fleet has left Crimea. This is the biggest news that has occurred in the war so far in the naval sphere, and something that the Russians will probably never recover from, and will probably be I guess the best way to put it is a indicator of how the rest of the war will go for the Russians at sea. They will not be engaging in any kind of naval activity for the large part whatsoever. But moving on into this big news today, and getting a little bit of a background here, because it's always important to have a background going into this stuff, especially with the Black Sea, considering that the news is so sparse on a daily basis of what's been going on. After the Ukrainian grain deal collapsed, the Russians declared that they would create a blockade of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, stopping any commercial shipping from entering Ukrainian waters and reaching the port of Odessa, even if it was humanitarian ships, even if it was grain ships meant to just ship Ukrainian grains to countries that needed the food. They were going to stop it all, and they tried for a short while to actually stop all shipping from entering Ukrainian waters. That sent the Ukrainians into hyperdrive mode. Over those next few weeks, about the past 3 weeks, the Ukrainian forces have continuously and relentlessly attacked Russian ships in the area of Ukrainian waters. They've also attacked them within the port of Sevastopol. They destroyed a hovercraft slash catamaran missile ship. They damaged it. They also destroyed a Kilo-class submarine, a Rapucha class landing ship. There were rumors that they ended up damaging both of the, I believe they are the Project 22610 class corvettes that the Russians had in the Black Sea Fleet. They ended up largely damaging or destroying most surface vessels that the Russian Navy had been using so far in the area to enforce the blockade. And we started to hear the rumors about a week and a half ago that some ships were leaving the port of Sevastopol and heading towards other locations. For example, this ship right here, which is now the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, from what we understand, I believe it's a Krivik class, left the port of Sevastopol, and from what we've been able to tell, it has never returned. This picture was taken 7 days ago, and this ship has never returned to port, and we've also heard no reports of it patrolling the area of the Russian blockade. The blockade, from what we understand, isn't even in effect anymore. We haven't heard anything about commercial shipping being stopped in the area, at least the ships that try, and we've also not heard anything about the Russian Black Sea Fleet threatening vessels with their presence to turn around and head back into NATO territorial waters or international waters of the Black Sea. We have not heard anything like that. And of course, yesterday, we got pictures from the area of Novorossiysk showing something very interesting. The Krivik-class ship is actually in Novorossiysk now. That ship was the one that we had pictured, and let me go right back over to Sevastopol. 7 days ago, we saw this ship leave Sevastopol right there. That's the exact same ship we're seeing on satellite footage right there, the Krivik class. And that, from what we know, is the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet at this point. It wasn't leaving this port to go onto a blockade mission. It wasn't even leaving port to fire off cruise missiles at Ukrainian cities in the western part of the country. It left with the sole purpose of breaking out and heading towards Novorossiysk, and we can now see it moored at Novorossiysk when this picture was taken on the 1st of October by satellite. And that is confirming that almost every Russian ship that we've seen leaving the port of Sevastopol, including this one, are all being relocated to Russian mainland ports, and specifically, most of them are heading towards the port of Novorossiysk. And looking at this larger picture right here, of the Russian wharf at Novorossiysk that is built for the Black Sea Fleet, or more so the Russian Navy that is inside of Novorossiysk, we can see that it is filled to the brim with almost every operational surface vessel that the Black Sea Fleet has that could be used in a combat role. We can of course see the Krivik class, we can also see the, and let me make sure I'm getting this correct and go back to the last picture. We can also see both of the Grigorovich class ships that are in port as well. We can then see a Nadia class. Up here, we can actually see a couple of unidentified surface vessels. So clearly, they are some kind of destroyers, but we don't know what kind. We can also see a smaller one here that may be a corvette. And then we can see 3 Kilo-class submarines. From what we understand, they have approximately 4 of these that are operational right now. And out of all 4, 3 of them are now seen at the port of Novorossiysk, stationed out of that port, not stationed out of Sevastopol, where they actually are supposed to be. And if you look at Sevastopol, and you look at the satellite footage from there, and I'll show y'all, you can actually see the submarine pins for the Kilo-class submarines, right? They're not really pins, more so moorings, but you can see them right here, and you can see that when this satellite picture was taken, 2 of those Kilo-class submarines were moored at their wharfs, more so, and I believe there was a third one somewhere moored out in the open water, but that one appears to have moved on. That's also a Foxtrot-class submarine that was stolen from the Ukrainians during the annexation of Crimea way back in 2014. It's never been used by the Russians. It just sits in port. But still, from what we understand, most of the Black Sea Fleet is now moving out of Sevastopol, abandoning the area, and moving on into mainland Russia. There are a couple of ports that they may be able to use. Novorossiysk is really the only one that is able to house any of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, but you can see that the moorings here are certainly not large enough to accommodate the entire Black Sea Fleet, meaning that some of these ships may end up using civilian moorings for commercial shipping inside of Novorossiysk, or they may have to move even further down and towards smaller ports, such as the ports here at Galinchik. There's a small little wharf over here, not really used for much rather than commercial shipping again, and it appears that it's still under construction, but may provide a temporary refuge for some of the Russian vessels, and then they'll have to send away boats to shore to really get anything done. They could also...
I'm just not really sure what their game plan is, because, you know, it's obviously better than being in Sevastopol, because it's obviously closer to Ukraine, but it's not like Ukraine still can't find a way to hit them, even moving to Novorossiysk.
That's true, but so far we've only seen, out of all the attacks, only one of them hit a Rapucha-class landing ship, and it was outside of Novorossiysk, and it was actually a little bit closer to the Kerch Strait, somewhere out here. And once it was hit, they then towed it right back to Novorossiysk, and from what you understand, it's in a floating dry dock in Novorossiysk undergoing emergency repairs. But still, you got a very good point. Novorossiysk is entirely within range of Ukrainian attacks. We've seen Ukrainian attacks reach all the way down to Sochi now, so it is clear and very obvious that they would be able to attack Novorossiysk. Maybe the Russians are thinking that they can consolidate most of their air defenses easier in this area, considering that there's already a ludicrous amount of air defense around Sochi because Putin's summer mansion is there. Maybe what they're thinking is they can stretch some of that air defense up towards Novorossiysk and kind of have a unified air defense command, all under one unit, all under one area, that can possibly protect the fleet a little bit better. But I don't really know, like you're saying, Matthew, what their long-term plan is, because as long as the Black Sea Fleet is in the Black Sea, they're largely unsafe wherever they go, whether it be the Russian mainland. Mostly, if they go more north of Novorossiysk, They might even be closer to Ukrainian attacks than Sevastopol was. So
I'm thinking because it really, like you're saying, and like I've said, it really doesn't change much by moving the ships to from Sevastopol to Novorossiysk. I'm thinking that maybe the Russians have gotten pretty credible intelligence that Ukraine plans to move on Crimea in a very big way, maybe in the upcoming weeks or something to that effect. And maybe they figured to go ahead and get the ships out of there, so that way they're not trying to, quickly like move them out and put them into full throttle to get them moving if Ukraine was to fully invade Crimea.
maybe. That may be the case. I have a feeling if that's true, we may see random explosions happening in Sevastopol with no explanation, and the Ukrainians may not lay claim to the attacks. If that's the case, that may be showing that the Russians are destroying all of the port facilities at Sevastopol, so that way the Ukrainians can't capture an intact port. But I feel like that's way down the road. Sevastopol is still a far ways away from the front lines. Just trying to reach the Crimean border right now, I believe that is a stretch of nearly 120 miles. And then from the Crimean border and into Sevastopol, heading down the E105 highway, that's another 100 miles to Sevastopol. So it is still incredibly far away from the active front line right now. So I don't think they'll be blowing up port facilities within the next few days, weeks, or maybe even months. But one thing's for certain, they are abandoning Sevastopol for some reason. And I have a feeling that the Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters, that of course was leveled, is also going to be moving towards the area of Novorossiysk, or maybe even into the area of the Southern Military Command into Rostov-on-Don. It might be
Maybe so.
safe-
And another idea that I just saw from Aaron Shu in the live chat, he said, unless the facilities have been too damaged to continue operations in Sevastopol, that might be another reason why they moved the ships out right now. And that is something I didn't think about, because obviously those missile attacks did damage some of their facilities there. And perhaps maybe they don't have the facilities to maintain the ships, perhaps.
And that is also something important as well. And that's a really good point. Because when you think about it, the burned out husks of the Kilo class submarine and the Rapucha are still inside of these dry docks right here, and they haven't been moved from what we know yet. They're going to have to pretty much break them up inside of the dry dock, and that could take months. And so if any other ships get damaged inside of Sevastopol, there's no recourse for them. I believe this dry dock up here may also be currently used at the moment, so it can't be vacated, it can't be used for emergency repairs. So that may be why. That's probably a very good point, that the Black Sea Fleet's leaving, because if another ship gets hit in Sevastopol, there are no repair facilities available to the entire fleet right now in this area, and so it would be better, even if it's worse, to just move them to Novorossiysk, so that way if they get attacked there, at least there is some kind of a floating dry dock there that is still open and vacant that could take on a damaged Russian ship where repairs could be effected. But really, there is no good reason for them to move them. They are still susceptible to attack about as much in Novorossiysk as they would be in Sevastopol, but it's still showing the Russian mindset that things have gone so terribly for the Black Sea Fleet, they have to leave Sevastopol. And there's also another good reason for this. The Russian Black Sea Fleet has taken such a considerable loss of their naval forces over the entire war that the Russians have probably decided that the remaining ships are too expensive and too valuable to lose, and so they'd rather try and move them to safety and just disengage their navy from the war entirely, instead of risk losing more service vessels, which they probably will not have the funds to try and replace after the war or even during the war right now. And so that may be another reason why they're moving the Black Sea Fleet, and I honestly have to tell y'all, that I think is the primary reason. Beyond Sevastopol possibly being more susceptible to attacks, I think it's largely because of the economic consequences of the Black Sea Fleet getting attacked decisively again. You have to remember that ships take years to build and are some of the most expensive things that a nation invests in. No aircraft costs as much as a naval destroyer. No tank costs as much as a naval destroyer. Navies are huge investments for the countries that field navies. And so losing ships is something that really hurts the pocketbooks of a government, more so than any other kind of loss that you can imagine militarily. And so for that reason, I think the Russians are pulling a whole Jutland right here. And let me explain that to y'all real quick, because this was a very interesting bit of history. Back in World War I, there was actually an idea to take all of the major navies in between the British Empire and the German Empire and just slam them into each other and just see what happens. And that did happen to a small part at the Battle of Jutland, which was the largest naval battle that was seen in the First World War. There, a forward element of the British Navy and a forward element of the German Navy ended up meeting each other, coming into contact, and at the end of it, I believe that 6 battleships were destroyed. Well, 6 dreadnoughts were destroyed on the British side, and something like 4 on the German side. But both sides looked at those losses, and that wasn't even the losses of the entire fleet. The entire fleets of both sides were something around 120 to 130 ships each, but those 6 losses on the British side and the 4 losses on the German side were so financially devastating just on their own that both sides decided, you know what, we better not engage them navally again, because that might end up bankrupting us if that happens. And so the British fleet withdrew into the North Sea near the area of Scapa Flow and just kind of hung out there for the rest of the war. And the Germans then retreated, I think, into Bremerhaven and Hamburg. Well, actually, I think it was just Bremerhaven and Wilhelmshaven, and they just stayed there until the war ended. They never left port again the entirety of the war. And so I think, and of course, really quickly, because I know someone's about to tell me I'm incorrect with a fact on the Battle of Jutland, I'm trying to recite that off the top of my head, and I'm not a Jutland expert, so the facts might be a little bit wrong on the losses and such things like that, but nevertheless, the point still stands. Those few naval losses in numbers were still so financially devastating and so concerning for both governments. They largely never fought at sea again in any large way throughout the First World War. There was never a major naval engagement in between the two sides beyond that one. And I think that's what's happened to the Russians here. The Ukrainians have so decisively engaged the Russian Navy and destroyed so much of it without taking very many losses in return that the Russians are now saying, if we take financial losses like these by losing more ships that are irreplaceable at this point, we won't have any other recourse than to just take them out of the war and pray that they survive. And I think that's what's happened right here with them moving to Novorossiysk. So this is, in that light, a monumental shift in Russian thinking, because now the Russian Navy will probably rarely ever be used in the war from this point forward. But we're yet to be proved on that, so that's just the theory. So we'll be waiting to see if the Russian Navy is still used heavily. Maybe they can still fire off cruise missiles and guided missiles from the area of Novorossiysk and the safety of the Kerch Peninsula. But we don't really know at the moment. From what we understand now, they may be out of the war for the duration of it. But moving on from that, and also moving on into the larger scale of things, because if we're looking at the Russian Navy as a monetary loss, many of y'all know that there has been some statements and some rumors that the Ukrainians have been very concerned about the lack of support from the United States, at least over the next 45 days. And it's something that the Ukrainian government, of course, is very concerned about, with the United States being one of the largest providers of foreign military assistance and economic aid of any other country. But one thing is true, is that there is a silver lining, and European countries are starting to step forward in ways they have never stepped forward before to help out the Ukrainians in their continued struggle and during this temporary little setback that we've seen in the in the US government. The Finns have come out today and they have made a statement. They are going to be authorizing a 2 billion euro, which is equivalent around 2.3 billion US dollars, aid package to Ukraine. It is one of the largest packages that we've heard the Finns provide yet. And this is according to Lou Anno Support's Twitter. He said Finland is preparing a new 2 billion euro defense aid package for Ukraine. According to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Finland, Elina Valtonen, they announced a new aid package for Ukraine, and it will, of course, consist of military equipment for soldiers and combat equipment that will equal 2 billion euros. That's around 2.3 billion US dollars. There was a mistranslation there. But this news is big. And it's showing that European countries, for the short while probably, this is probably expected to be a temporary solution by the Finns and many other European countries, they are going to be stepping up and trying to fit the bill that the US has normally been paying on its own over these next 45 days. And that's great to know, because this, of course, will alleviate some of the stress and pressure off of the Ukrainian government that the largest supporter of the war is currently out of the fight for the next 45 days financially. So, of course, great to see, and hopefully this support will be able to help the Ukrainians to continue to fight on the war without suffering any real repercussions from the lack of U.S. support over about the next month and a half. Speaking of something that happened in America today, many of y'all, and also let me make sure to color up that marker because it's something important to talk about, many of y'all may, because 50% of y'all are from America from what I understand, some of y'all may have been somewhere today, in a building, maybe in a class at law school, and everyone's phones went crazy at the same time, and almost nobody knew what was actually happening, because apparently a lot of people didn't get the memo. I'm just
Well, the
wondering.
memo. Don't mention the memo.
Oh God, the memo. But I'm just wondering, really quickly, where were y'all when the emergency alert test went off? Because I'll tell y'all really quickly, I was actually in the middle of a class at law school, and when it went off, our contracts professor's face went flush. Like, they actually didn't know what was happening. They said, "What's going on? What's happening?" Because everyone's phone started going, brrr, just crazy. And almost nobody in the class knew what was going on. But I just said, "Oh, it's just a drill, don't worry." And so everyone was freaked out for a minute. The class was like disrupted for a whole 7 minutes trying to calm back down because a lot of people thought we were getting nuked. Like a whole bunch of people thought doomsday was happening right then and there. But I could see a lot of people saying they were at work. Let's see, Hokey Redneck said never had a national alert. What? Dude, that was a big deal today. That was huge.
Man, I was sitting in my law school class and the torch professor nearly bolted out the door when it started happening. Like, he had pure fear on his face. Like, he clearly did not get the memo.
Man, nobody got the memo, really. I was really surprised. Like, maybe like 4 or 5 other people in the class knew about it, and then everyone else was just panicked, and they were trying to read their phone and see what was going on. But I do have to say this, it did work. And it worked incredibly well because it got a lot of people's attention quickly, and they were looking at their phones trying to figure out what was going on. So if anything does happen in America that requires for that emergency alert to be put on everyone's phones at the same time, thank the Lord it does work. So at least we know that. But moving on from that and into the United States news in general, many of y'all, of course, just heard me say that for the next 45 days, the United States will not be able to provide any monetary support, both military and economically, to Ukraine. And there's a little bit of a caveat to that because the U.S. Department of Defense has done some incredible work today, paperwork and bureaucratic undertakings, to try and find a way to get some support to Ukraine during the meantime. And they've done something that I never even thought they could do. They are going to be taking tens of thousands of seized Iranian AKs and other kinds of small arms, along with millions of rounds of seized Iranian ammunition as well, because, of course, no one has to pay for that stuff. It's just sitting in a stockyard somewhere. And they are going to be sending that over to Ukraine in the meantime. It's, of course, not as impressive or as large of an aid package as we have seen before, but it is still really great to know that there are folks in the Department of Defense that are trying to find some way to help out in any way that can count. And while small arms are actually one of the smaller ends of actual frontline fighting, it's more so based in the heavier weapons such as artillery, it is amazing to know that we are still trying to find a way during this very weird time in the U.S. Spending policies to find ways to support Ukraine. And also, those look like PKP machine guns. But most of these are AKs. And also, Matthew, I don't know what's up with this. Did you notice that they took the dust covers off of almost every single AK out there? Like, they're just sitting on the
like,
ground.
how long did it take them to line up all these AKs? Why'd they line them up in the concrete like those?
I don't know, man. Like, this would actually freak me out. Like, if it just got humid in this area, so many of these AKs are going to start rusting, and it would make me panic. It really would, to see all of this out in the open like that.
This is like one of these like cartel like drug bust like pictures. Like, they'll lay all the goods out on the table and be like, "Look at what we got."
Yeah,
Look at all these AKs that we got from Iran. I guess you could say now Iran is supporting Ukraine. They've decided to support both sides now.
And I gotta say, it's great to know that they are. It's great to know that the Iranians are finally picking the right side. It's just good to know that the U.S. was able to have a helping hand in making sure that their weapons would end up in the right hands. Of course, I'm sure the Iranians are very happy about this, have absolutely no complaints, and hopefully we'll see a lot of these AKs in service on the front lines. But I have to give y'all a little bit of my 2 cents here really quickly on these AKs. If these are the actual AKs being sent, many of y'all are noticing that these have folding stocks on them. I've got to be honest with y'all, I absolutely hate the AK-74 folding stocks. I believe these are 74s. Well, actually, no, these look like AK-47s or AKMs because they don't have that front little muzzle brake on them. But anyways, I absolutely hate the folding stocks that the AKs have because they are very uncomfortable and they're very wobbly as well. There's a lot of give in them. Like, if you grab it and you start moving like the front part of the gun and the back part of the gun opposite of each other, there's like maybe a ½ inch of give in that stock where it just wiggles around. It's honestly not that great in my opinion. Hopefully there's a lot more fixed stock AKs that they're getting instead, because I think for accuracy reasons that would probably be a lot better. But in terms of keeping a rifle compact and making sure that it's a lot easier to carry, this is probably better, but I still consider accuracy to be a little bit more important, so that way when you're trying to suppress an enemy force, the bullets are flying right over their head instead of kind of in the general area, just kind of around them. But moving on from that, and that great bit of news that the U.S. is still trying to find ways to support Ukraine, even in the middle of the tough times financially that the U.S. government is going through spending-wise. When I say that, the U.S. government and the U.S. economy is not going into recession. It's not. It is a problem with our fiscal spending policies here in the United States. There's been a lot of arguments about them. It's ended up causing a bit of a stall, and currently everyone's trying to figure out how to get through it. There's a 45-day emergency spending bill in place, so that way the Congress can try and figure out what to do over the next 45 days. But there are also other things now that are complicating that issue as well. We can't go into it much because it is a political issue, and we've pledged to remain apolitical on this channel and not pick a political side. But of course, I hope y'all do vote for me for president in 2040, because then I will be political, and it's going to be a political that hopefully all of y'all will like a lot. But moving on from that, and from the United States, it's now time for us to move on into Russia. Because speaking of that emergency alert that I was talking about just a minute ago, and a lot of y'all were saying where y'all were, and a lot of y'all were at work, and that's where it's probably the funniest to see what happened. But anyways, moving on into Russia, interestingly enough, they actually had their own emergency alert test today at the exact same time we did. And here's
They got nasty though. They got extreme, man. They had the kids putting on the gas masks and everything.
Oh yeah, we're about to be getting to that in a minute. But here's a clip of one of the air sirens playing. I believe this is in Moscow. Look, an old Soviet air raid siren. But moving on from that, this was probably the most chilling part of it, is that their emergency alert test wasn't just to make sure that the system was running. Kids across the Russian Federation that were inside of school at the time donned gas masks, and it was actually stated that this was a nuclear attack drill that the Russians were conducting. It wasn't just a general emergency alert test. They were preparing for a nuclear attack. Foreshadowing much, I don't know, because the Russians are ones to be a little overdramatic. But here's a picture right here of some kids at school donning the infamous GP5 gas mask. This thing's actually famous, if y'all don't know. Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl uses this in their video game. Many video games that have any kind of a Soviet-esque, aesthetic to them, they have this gas mask in it. It's famous. Everyone knows this gas mask. But I've got to be honest with y'all. While the Russians consider nuclear attacks, at least in this drill, to be very concerning and very dangerous, what's probably more dangerous is the gas masks they're making these kids wear. I don't know. Well, actually, Matthew, I'm going to ask you, Matthew, what is usually inside of a gas mask filter in the Western world?
I want to say asbestos, but I'm not really sure.
Charcoal. It's a charcoal filter.
They don't put asbestos in those things anymore?
No, actually, we phased asbestos out of the out of the gas mask filters, I think, in the 80s here in the Western world. Yeah, very, very smart. But in Russia, not the case. These little green filters that are attached to these gas masks are filled with asbestos fiber filters. And these little filters do eventually expire, and I'm betting money that some of them have actually expired inside of these filters these kids are using. And it's possible that these kids are breathing in a massive amount of asbestos fibers by putting on these filters. And I see some people...
I wonder how the Russian kids interpret this stuff, because to me from the outside it looks like it might be somewhat not necessarily traumatizing, but a little bit weird for the kids to be putting on gas masks. I don't know if they look at it like it's just normal, it's what Russia's about, or do they look at it like it's bad?
I think they probably look at it as normal, because when you grow up in Russia, I'm sure stuff like this is pretty normal, for the large part, trying to prepare for nuclear drills, acting like the whole world's out to kill you. It's got to be just par for the course at this point for these kids. But still, this is something that I cannot state enough is pretty bizarre. And a lot of people may be thinking, well, maybe they have a modern version that has a charcoal filter. No. The Soviets produced so many of these gas mask filters that all of them are asbestos-based. There are no charcoal filters, from what I understand, that are used for the GP5 gas mask. I think some of the more modern versions that the Russians made did transition over to charcoal filters, but these are probably exclusively asbestos filters that these kids are using, and that poses massive health risks. Asbestos is one of the most toxic and dangerous things in the world. For thousands of years, people actually thought it was one of the greatest things out there in the world. One of the greatest minerals that you can turn into fibers. It was completely fireproof. The stuff's amazing in that regard. The asbestos is. It's one of the most fireproof and fire retardant kind of objects out there. But the problem with it is that it is, of course, incredibly toxic. And that's something we did not know until the modern day, just about a few decades ago. And then here in the West, we went in a massive crusade to rid asbestos from literally everything that ever existed. But in Russia, and also in most former Eastern European countries, including Ukraine, that's not the case. And I also hate to say this, but whenever you see Ukrainian soldiers inside of buildings in Ukraine, and there is a large amount of dust and smoke that has been kicked up in the building after it's been hit, most of that is probably asbestos, because Ukraine actually doesn't have any anti-asbestos laws in place. And so all of the buildings that had asbestos inside of them still have asbestos inside of them even to this day. So kind of a little unfortunate to think about, kind of a terrible thing, really, but nevertheless, risk that many Eastern Europeans live with, and something that these kids literally face down face to face today during the nuclear attack drills. But nevertheless,
I can't help but think that this was Russia's like lame attempt to try to one up the United States on the same day we held an emergency test by making it more extreme and more traumatic for the citizens. So that way it looks like they're more prepared. That's probably their mindset on this.
Probably is their mindset, because the Russians are pretty stupid like that for the large part. So I bet you it was like, oh, look, little one upping you, look, we have nuclear drills. It's like, here in America, we don't need a nuclear drill, because we understand, Matthew, we actually know what's going to go down in a nuclear war. Everyone's just going to get blasted. There's going to be no chance of survival for the most part. Good luck if you are a survivor. About a third of the population will be killed instantly, and it's estimated that out of the remaining 2/3, half of those will die within the first year. So it's not going to be fun. So wouldn't even try and prepare for it, because I'm hedging my bets probably would be in the 66% of people that would end up getting killed. I mean, hell, our house is literally in the fireball that would engulf the city of Birmingham. If the nuclear missile that is aimed at Birmingham hit it, we would probably die most likely instantly. So there's really no point in us preparing.
Let's be real though. Like, I would rather be in the fireball, because if you get out of the fireball and you're in the radiation zone where you're in pretty bad shape, that's going to be a very slow and nasty death. I know it's kind of getting dark, but you know, I wouldn't want to be hanging around after something like that happened.
And also, I saw this. This is funny, man. The B-21 Raider said have to be outside any city, middle of nowhere. And then a lot of people are going to be thinking, oh, the Midwest, it's safe. There's nobody out. Nope. You're wrong. You're wrong. Don't even say that. Don't even think it. Because that's where all of the United States' strategic missiles and missile silos are. The Russians are going to carpet bomb the Midwest more than any other part of the continental United States. That area is going to get it worse than anything. Honestly, you would probably be better somewhere in Kentucky for the most part than you would be in the northern places of the Midwest, like Nebraska, Wyoming, Kansas, Colorado, or South Dakota, because that area is going to be a nuclear sea by the time the Russians got done with that, at least if all of the missiles fired that they say they have targeted at our silos. And also, what's really crazy is that you actually can pull up maps online that are 100% accurate saying where the Russian missiles are aimed right now, because by treaty, both the United States and the Soviet Union, and now the Russian Federation, which was their successor, had to actually state and declare exactly where their nuclear missiles were aimed. And every single one of them is accounted for. That's aimed at the United States and the Soviet Union. So you will know exactly where the missile would fall. So you can kind of prepare if you were one of those sort of people. But really bizarre, and something that you would think is counterintuitive, that they would start nuking the Midwest. There really is no one living out there. But it's not about who's living out there. It's about what is out there. And it's the nuclear arsenal of the United States. But moving on from that, not to be a damper on everyone's parade of thinking, I'll go live in the Midwest. Hate to tell y'all, it's going to get nuked worse than most other places. It's going to get nuked worse than Alabama will, actually, I think, as far as Kansas goes. But anyways.
Oh, man, they're going to turn that sand to glass. I'm telling you, man. They're going to have, like, an abundance of glass.
Dude, people in Kansas are going to be going, man, dude, those nuclear bombs are going to flatten us. And then you look around, but you're already flat. There's nothing here. But...
Man, that shockwave will flow like perfectly over that flat land like that. I know that sounds kind of bad, but it would.
Man, oh my lord. Think about that, though. There are no hills or mountains to stop most of the blast wave in that area. It's just flat. It's just going to travel until it actually dissipates in a normal rate. If y'all go to Kansas, y'all will know what I mean. Past this area here, at Salina, from Salina all the way to the Coloradan border, it's perfectly flat. There are mountains over here. There is nothing out here. It's literally the flattest land you will ever see. And it's also like that in eastern Colorado and most of Wyoming, and also in Nebraska as well. It's also incredibly flat out there. It is unbelievably flat. And so unlike places like Alabama, like for example, if Birmingham gets hit, we actually have mountains straddling the southern side of Birmingham and the northern side. So the mountain ridge here near Irondale might actually absorb a decent amount of the shock from the nuke that's aimed at Shuttlesworth Airport. But it's still going to go over the mountain and start enveloping the rest of the area, but it probably won't be as severe as it would have been if the area was perfectly flat. But in a place like the Midwest, there is no refuge, or there is no way to dissipate the blast of a nuclear missile. It's going to travel until it actually runs out of energy. But anyways, moving on from that small side note about the Russian nuclear drills and how a nuclear war would go, it's largely futile to try and prepare for one. That's kind of the whole point of nuclear war, and the major point why one should be avoided. There is no winner in a nuclear war, and that's
that's not going to prevent me from buying all my nice gear, though. Like, I still got to get the iodine tablets, the little gas mask and stuff. Because at least I can feel like I'm prepared.
Man, that crap is going to burn quite nicely when the fireball comes.
Oh, yes. It will burn quite nicely, like nice kindling. It'll burn better than Russian equipment.
Dude, man, the nuclear fireball will roll over our house. You'll just hear, ah! And so it'll say, "Oh my God, what's happening out there?" And it's just the wind escaping from the wood in the house. It's no big deal. It's no big deal at all. But anyways, moving on from Russia, in that dark joke I just made that Matthew didn't laugh at all, because he was like, "Damn, that's deep." But moving on from that, damn son, we're now going to be moving on inside of Ukraine, but actually we're going to be moving down to Sevastopol specifically, and the area of Crimea, because the Ukrainian Special Forces raided the peninsula again today and planted the Ukrainian flag onto the territory of Crimea again. And this time, the landing force was far larger than it was the first time. Instead of it just being a platoon like last time, this time it appeared to be several platoons, along with multiple support boats. But while we are getting into that, so many of y'all have had comments on what happened to the Black Sea Fleet today and what many military analysts are now coming out and confirming. And I gotta say, it is some pretty interesting stuff. And a lot of y'all have also brought up comments that I haven't been able to bring up yet that were very good and very well thought out with what the idea could be. And they are very, very good. And I think it's worth talking about what a lot of y'all have been saying about the Russian Black Sea Fleet and why they've moved to Novorossiysk and what may be their end goal in doing something like that. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So our first poll question said, do you think the Black Sea Fleet will be better protected by moving out of Sevastopol port? 38%, the most popular option, said yes, it will be a better position. 24% said, maybe, but Ukraine can still reach it. 33% said no, Ukraine will hit them anyways, and 5% said unsure. And to me, I think very clearly, that really didn't change very much when it comes to the capability that Ukraine has to hit the ships. There's clearly, to me, some ulterior motive for moving those ships rather than trying to hide them for military purposes. So I would say that Ukraine can hit them anyways, and the next poll that we have will address the exact reason why. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it probably will actually help the Russians to try and preserve the strength and integrity of the fleet at this point. Because if we measure the distance from Sevastopol to the nearest Ukrainian land, and let's just say it's right there, 144 miles. Now let's do that for Novorossiysk. Let's find the closest Ukrainian front line, which is up there. Roughly about 240 miles away or so. That's about the closest Ukrainian front line there is. So it's twice the distance from an active Ukrainian front line. And that doesn't mean that they're completely impervious to Ukrainian attacks. We've seen them successfully reach Sochi just this week, just on Sunday. So it's not out of the question that they could still make it all the way down there. But it does give more ground in between the Russian Black Sea Fleet and a Ukrainian drone, which may give them more time or more of a chance to be able to spot the drone or the Storm Shadow that's being fired at Novorossiysk and attempt to shoot it down. Also, another thing, Matthew, that just hit me. Novorossiysk is literally just out of range of a Storm Shadow. It's literally at the maximum distance that a Storm Shadow could possibly be fired. And that may be why they're moving it, because it wasn't really the drones that were the massive risk to the ships in the Black Sea Fleet. It was more so the Storm Shadow missiles that were being used against the dry docks and also against some of the ships that were just at their moorings. That appeared to be the much major risk out of all of them. And that may be
True.
why.
But I think with the larger drones that Ukraine's starting to use, I think the drones with the longer range, which can reach there, to my understanding, those will have not nearly as bad as an effect as a Storm Shadow would, but they're still going to put some damage on those ships, enough to disable them.
Man, they're gonna be putting some hurt on them, but
So,
maybe,
hurt.
maybe they will be. But once again, the drones do have a lower success rate just due to their speed, and also a decent amount of them, when they get large enough, can be picked up on radar, which tips off the Russians to try and destroy them. Of course, they're not always successful, but it would take a large amount of drones to try and break through for a few of them to finally make it without being shot down. With Storm Shadows, on the other hand, we haven't seen a single Storm Shadow, from what we've been able to confirm, shot down yet or destroyed before it can make it to its target. All of the Storm Shadows, from what we know, have made it to their target, and that may be why they moved to Novorossiysk instead, was so that way they could move out of Storm Shadow range and try and preserve the fleet that way. Because they may not be able to destroy all Ukrainian drones, and some of them may get through, but they are now ensuring that no Storm Shadow will ever have a chance of hitting the Black Sea Fleet, because it's so far south now from any Ukrainian airspace that there would be no way to fire a Storm Shadow that far and hit the fleet. So that may be why they did it, now that we've measured out the distance from the front line to Novorossiysk. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well in my opinion, maybe gives a little bit more merit as to why they moved the Black Sea Fleet to Novorossiysk. And based off of that one fact alone, and not considering everything, because I'm sure if we considered everything, it would be a lot more difficult, just considering the fact of the distance that it is from the front lines and how far a Storm Shadow can be fired, I think it will most likely help to preserve the size of the Black Sea Fleet. But I don't think we'll ever see them in combat again. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll is a little bit more specific. It says, why do you think Russia decided to move the Black Sea Fleet back to Russia at this particular time? It looks like 33% said Russia is hoping to hide their ships. 32% said these Sevastopol facilities are too damaged. 29% said Ukraine is preparing to attack Crimea, and 6% said unsure. And on this one, I know the enforcer says that the attack on Crimea, or at least a full-fledged attack by Ukraine, isn't really ready quite yet. But to me, I think Ukraine's getting to the point in the war where they're going to try to launch a dramatic attack on Crimea. I would assume, and this is speculation, maybe in the next couple of months. Because with all the very dire issues about the aid going to Ukraine, creating some concern, I think Ukraine is under some big pressure to make some results happen very fast. And I think we're going to see maybe Crimea be the target of the new results that they're looking for, by launching some kind of maybe long-distance attack or perhaps a more direct attack by their forces on Crimea. I think that would definitely put Ukraine back in the news and cause them to maybe get some more support. But Enforcer, what say you?
That may possibly be the case, but I think they really did just move them out of the area to try and stop them from being hit by a Storm Shadow. It seems to me to be the most logical answer, and also it'll stop them from taking further losses. Also, I know that I only brought up one historic example earlier of the Battle of Jutland and the results that it created, where the British and German navies never encountered each other in a major naval battle again, because both sides were largely scared of the kind of monetary losses and what kind of damage it would cause to their navy, which is very hard to replace ships in the navy, even when they are built and pumped out like some kind of an assembly line. It's still very difficult to replace them and very expensive. And I'm going to give you all another example, because this one I know many people will be familiar with. All of you know of the German battleship Bismarck. I know that everyone's got to know about it, because this ship is famous around the world for being Germany's top-line battleship. It was a pretty good battleship, I'm not even going to lie. It had 15-inch guns, a little bit smaller than the conventional guns at the time, but what it made up for, well, what it was missing in firepower, it made up for in speed. This was probably one of the fastest battleships out there at its time. And all of y'all know about the story of the British attempt to sink the Bismarck, which ended up actually succeeding, and the captain of the Bismarck scuttled the ship and then surrendered his crew over to the Allies, or more so the British. But what's more important is not the story of the Bismarck. It's the story of its sister ship that y'all probably haven't heard much about, because it didn't actually have that well of a storied life after the sinking of the Bismarck. The Tirpitz. Here's the Tirpitz. It's the only other ship that was the sister ship to the Bismarck. Only 2 Bismarck-class battleships were built, and this was the only other one, the Tirpitz. After the Bismarck was destroyed, the German government did the exact same thing they did in the First World War. They went, ooh, we lost a Bismarck. That was kind of an expensive ship to build, and I don't think we can end up losing the Tirpitz. So let's take it to a fjord in Norway, and let's just keep it there. And that's what it did. It stayed in a fjord in Norway for 2 years, 2.5 years, I believe, until it was sunk by Allied bombing in 1944, just about. And the same thing happened. And I think that's what the Russian Navy is doing right here, is what the Germans did in both World War I and World War II. They're going, the amount of losses that we've taken monetarily and also just to the Navy as a whole are irreplaceable and too expensive to sacrifice any other ships in our Navy. We're going to take them largely out of the war and try and keep them safe. And I think that's what they've done. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll for now, so we are moving into our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $100 donation from a channel legend, Mark Incompetent Drone Operator, who makes a return. And thank you very much, Mark, and also, welcome back. He says, I believe U.S. commitments already made and the residue of the budget already approved are not affected over the 45 days, and the question is, what happens after that? And Mark, I believe you are correct before the enforcer answers that question. There is residual support. However, I'm not sure if it'll last for the entire 45 days because the Pentagon is being very vague as to exactly how much support is left. But they are warning that support is running out fast and that something needs to happen, or otherwise we're going to be in a very bad situation with sending aid to Ukraine and perhaps not being able to send it at all. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I've got to thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Mark. And I would have to say, yes, from what we understand, there is some residual budget left for Ukraine. But we also heard a really weird statement from the Department of Defense back when the U.S. government did not include Ukraine in the emergency spending budget. They said immediately that the funds had run out. And that was a statement that was made literally, I think, within the hour. I don't think that's true because they still have funding that was appropriated through last year's spending budget that has already been confirmed and is ready to go. It's already been earmarked for Ukraine. So I think that the statement may have been a little untrue and maybe possibly made for a political reason to cause hype around the emergency spending bill. Perhaps that may have been the case of making that statement, because from what we've understood and what we've researched, it should entirely be the case that there is still some funding that is inside of the U.S. government that is earmarked for Ukraine and is still being sent over as of right now. So I think you were entirely correct with that, Mark, from what we've been able to read and look around on. But of course, that is what we've been able to find. Maybe y'all can find something different, but that's the information we have. And also, the big question really is, what happens after the 45 days are over? And that's kind of something that we really don't know at the moment. It seems as though the government is in a little bit of a conundrum. And of course, this is something I have to say because this is something that we've been looking at. We're going to say it apolitically. We're not going to say it in condemnation or support of any political party, any political group, or any political affiliation. But to get into what's happened in the U.S. government recently, many of y'all probably heard about the historic removal of the Speaker of the House. And with the removal of the Speaker of the House, they have to now select a new Speaker of the House within this next 45 days to be able to really do anything in Congress. If a new Speaker isn't picked, nothing can really happen. And so before we even get to deciding how government spending is going to work, there has to be a Speaker of the House that is selected. And the question is, can that happen before 45 days? And then after that, can they even approve a fiscal spending budget before the government shutdown begins? We don't really know. And so that may actually pose some larger issues to how long this lack of foreign support from the United States to Ukraine will go based off of the current conundrums inside of the U.S. Congress. Of course, not going to say, I have to say this so many times because I know people are going to now take this as a moment to get on their soapbox. I'm not supporting or condemning anything that's happened in the Congress at the moment. I'm just explaining what's happened and why that may be creating more difficulties for Ukrainian support. But it is a bit of a concerning situation, and we will be trying to wait and see how it turns out. Hopefully it turns out in the benefit of Ukraine, whatever that may be. Hopefully it turns out in the benefit of Ukraine. And also I heard Brett say there's an interim speaker, but I believe that they actually have to try and get an actual Speaker of the House, and that's going to be their pressing concern as of right now. But with that,
and also another consideration that even if they can get a Speaker of the House in there, it's going to be tough because even with the Speaker there, they weren't able to come to an agreement that included Ukraine aid. So even if everything went to plan, they got a new Speaker, etc., there's no guarantee that Ukraine's will be included in the new spending bill, the permanent one. So, it's just all up in the air right now, and I think that's getting Ukraine very concerned, and that's probably going to, in my opinion, cause Ukraine to do something to make sure that they are almost guaranteed to get more aid.
And that is something that is also true as well, and that's also what's causing a lot of fear. There wasn't really a lot of fear when the 45-day spending bill came around. There was actually a little bit of fear that was created when the Speaker of the House was removed, because there's a question of if the new speaker will be, pro-Ukrainian or not. That's a little bit of a concern right now that's being brought around. We are largely thinking that they will be, and that will be great. Not going into anything beyond that. We're not allowing anyone to go into anything beyond that. All we care about is if that Speaker of the House is going to be pro-Ukrainian or not. From what we understand, they most likely will be. But we don't really know how this is going to work, how that's going to happen. Beyond that, hopefully a pro-Ukrainian speaker will be picked, and we will be able to move back on the track of approving another spending budget for next year, and then approving more support for Ukraine to try and keep the war going. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I just saw someone, and I have to answer this question, say, why in the world do you put yourself into such a pretzel when addressing politics? Well, the reason why is because a lot of people always act like their side's right. And I know that you asking that question, you have a political opinion, and you are clearly in one side or the other. I don't know which side it is, and I don't really care to know, and I don't really want to know. That's your business, not mine. But when people say that, they want me to agree with them. But the problem is that everyone in the world doesn't agree with your side of things. And I may not agree with your side of things either. Who knows? I think it's more important to keep things generalized and not try and have a whole package while I try and slap that fly out of the air that keeps on flying around my face. You have to make sure to keep things generalized, because trying to throw Ukrainian support into an overall package that everyone has to accept with everything else, whether it be left-leaning or right-leaning, you're going to end up getting rid of half of all of Ukraine's supporters. Most everyone in the United States is unanimous in their support for Ukraine. There's maybe about 20 to 25% of the population that is not. And you're going to be taking that 75 to 80% of people that support Ukraine, and you're going to be cutting that in half, now down to 40%, regardless of what side you pick. That is a terrible choice for Ukraine. That is going to be slashing their support down into the minority. It's not going to be the majority anymore, and that is a terrible idea. That's why I do not go into politics, and I do not make political statements either way, because regardless of what my political beliefs are, there is a war going on. And it's a lot more important for people on every side to be united behind an individual single cause to support Ukraine than trying to bring in petty squabbles of American politics into a situation that is affecting tens of millions of lives and NATO's strategic concerns. And so with that, I hope that addresses that and why we don't go into it that way. But thank you so much once again for the incredibly massive amount of support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because folks like you supporting our channel help us to make it possible for us to be the way we are. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Troy Wilson, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Troy, for that support, as always. And he's a longtime channel legend as well. And he says, how is the LSA flag coming along? And could we have a sneak peek and slow Ukraine?
And I thank you so much for the support. And I thank you for caring about the flag. And also, I love to know that people are looking forward to a flag. And I hate to say this, Troy, I would give you a sneak peek, but it's hideous right now. I'm still working on it, still trying to revise it. I still haven't been happy with it. I'm a perfectionist, and I'm probably going to keep on working on it until something comes up that looks good. One thing I'm actually thinking is that we may have a generalized Lee Spring Army flag, but the flag will actually be different for each country in the world. We'll probably start out rolling out we'll have one LSA flag. It's probably going to be a very simple one. I was thinking a crimson background with it just in bold text LSA on it, and that's just going to be the generic LSA flag. But then we're going to be getting into specific flags for each nation. Like the British, for example. Well, also, I forgot to explain, there will be a seal on the individual nation flags. It's going to be a lion on one side, because we actually ancestrally have a house that we were affiliated with that founded a dynasty that lasted for about 250 years, and it's really cool because they have their little seal and everything that we know exists. It's an actual one. And I was thinking of using that for one of them, which will be that lion on one side, and then on the other side, there's going to be a honey badger, and they're going to be holding up a shield that will have the symbol of whatever country it may be. So for the British, it'll probably be a lion. For the Germans, it's probably going to be some kind of an eagle. Not that eagle. It's going to be the modern German, the Federal Republic of Germany's eagle. It's not going to be the other one. For America, it's going to be a bald eagle, but we're going to make the design look really, really cool and probably very late 19th century-ish, because I think that was probably one of the coolest looking eagles we had, which was on the back of the silver dollar. And we'll be trying to do that for all of the major countries and then roll out at least Spring Army flags for all of the smaller countries as well. So that way it's individualized to everyone in the Lee Spring Army, more so than just, a generalized Lee Spring Army flag, because I think it would be cool for every country in the Lee Spring Army that has a large group of people to be represented. Sadly, though, for the smaller countries that watch, for example, India, while India is a massive country, we have very few viewers from India, we probably wouldn't be creating an individualized Lee Spring Army flag for India until there was a large enough Indian community of Lee Spring Army viewers that it would make sense to have a flag for them. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Troy, but we're still working on it. We're still trying to crank the thing out, and I hope that eventually we will have flags for y'all, because we've been working hard as hell to try and get flags out. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, Troy. And of course, we will have an Australian Lee Spring Army flag. It'll probably be a kangaroo or something similar, and New Zealand will have a kiwi. Of course, we're going to go with animals being the symbols of each country in the little shield, and we're going to try and come up with really cool looking ones. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Troy, and helping the channel to keep on running. Folks like you who support this channel help us to keep the lights on and help us to keep this thing rolling. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again. And with that being said, we're on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the Ukrainian news.
All right, and moving into our final super chat of the segment, we have a $33 donation from Hal Rose, and big shout out to Hal for that support and helping to keep us running, because all the support does keep us running, and we do appreciate it very much. And Hal says, Enforcer Matt, have you heard some interesting news from Brussels? What say you? And pick a question, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Hal. And I have not heard any very interesting news from Brussels lately. I think we got something way back at the first day of last week, which would have been Thursday, that NATO said the war will end the quicker we support Ukraine and the more we do. That's something we've heard, but I haven't heard a lot beyond that. So at the moment, that's really all we have. But I'd still thank you so much once again for support, Hal, and helping the channel to keep on running. If you've heard anything new, let us know, and we'll try and circle back to it. But the last thing I heard was on the first day of this war week, and it was that Jens Stoltenberg said, the more we support Ukraine, the quicker the war will end. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support in helping this channel to keep on running. You have been around forever, Hal, and also Mark and Troy, all three of y'all have been around forever, and I gotta thank y'all so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running tonight, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here day in and day out, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern time every single night, spending almost all of our free time doing this, and we are more than honored to be able to run this stream for each and every single one of y'all every single night. And so thank you to all three of y'all once again. I hope I was able to address all of y'all's questions the best I could. And with that, we're now going to be moving back on into the news and into Crimea, where we saw today that Ukrainian special forces landed on the peninsula and were able to plant a flag for a short while. But here's the clip. We also have to mute it, but you can see all of the Ukrainian ribs on the move. Oh! And we see them making their way to the shoreline of Crimea. There it is right there. And we can see the other boats, the supporting boats, just floating out at sea, waiting for the actual landing groups to do their job. Actually, we can see some of them disembarking all the way out there. It looks like they're on jet skis. And we now see the jet skis putting closer to shore. And the video appears to end as they're disembarking. We now see the Ukrainian flag once again raised on the territory of Crimea, and proving that Russian defenses of the peninsula are practically non-existent navally. Really impressive to see, really cool to know, and once again, Another groundbreaking achievement by Ukrainian special forces to not just land once on the Crimean Peninsula, but twice. Another cool thing that we saw in the area of the Black Sea was that a British surface-to-air missile defense system shot down a drone near Odessa just last night. Here's the clip. And also let me go back, because it has no music and the audio is really cool. And it got it. Twice. That was impressive. Dude, that missile was like... That missile would break necks. Like, look at this. Like, dang.
My neck is broken.
Spinal. Spinal. But still, an amazing system right there. We don't even know what kind of system it is. But it did incredibly well, nevertheless. And I gotta say, huge credit to it. With that, we're going to be moving on from the city of Odessa and the amazing air defense there, and on into the western area of Ukraine, where we got to see a new armored vehicle introduced into Ukrainian service. This is the Escod armored vehicle. This I don't really know a lot about. It kind of looks a little bit like a CV-90 or something else. I can't really tell what it is. Let me pull this thing up. The Escod armored vehicle. Let's see here. This was designed jointly by Austria and Spain, and it was designed to replace the M113. It does appear that some of them have been in service from 2002 to present, but these aren't the one. Those are not the ones that we're seeing in that picture right there. The ones that we know were in service from 2002 to now are these kinds of Ascods right here, which appear to have a very similar turret to a Bradley with a 25mm Bushmaster possibly in the turret. Let's see if it is. It is a 30mm Mauser. Oh, dang.
A Mauser?
Geschlick my Lightman. But anyways,
oh.
Very cool to see that they have a whole bunch of these in service with Spain and Austria. And I guess you could say that when the Spanish roll these things out onto the field, everyone's living in Spain without the S. They're living in pain. But anyways, moving on from that, great to see that a modern version of the Ascod may be provided to Ukraine. And I gotta say, this thing looks sleek. Mostly,
it does. And also it's called the Platforma Autonoma. Is that like the Hakuna Matata or something?
Oh, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. But anyways, moving on from that, a little bit of news in Western Ukraine and moving our way over to our location unknowns, we also got to see some really cool clips from the location unknowns. For example, a whole bunch of shell art. Again, I have to show this stuff to y'all because it's really cool. We see some shell art for the Ghost of Kiev, gone and not forgotten. We can also see some sunflowers growing out of a little shell. Very nice. Sunflowers, by the way. I think you'll get what that's trying to infer. Some Russian is sleeping. But anyways, we can also see a little snowy house painted onto an ammunition. Well, a spent casing, sorry. We can also see a candle holder made out of a shell casing. Very cool. Another shell casing painted with a Ukrainian cat. The Kherson cat, most likely. And you can also see this one has a little rose made out of the top of it with another bullet. Pretty cool. Pretty art-like. We can also see more shells. And, oh man, you don't want to know what she's doing in Dubai. But anyways, we can also see another Ukrainian trident painted in flowers. Overall, just some really impressive artwork being done by a Ukrainian artist in support of the war. And once again, we can see the little Tin Man guys raising Ukrainian flags. A shush helmet that's been painted up pretty damn nice, gotta admit. Some Ukrainian tridents with fighter jet pieces on them from shot down Russian aircraft. Another little Ukrainian soldier. This one's got an AK. Oh, whoa, Jamal, don't pull out the 9. And then in the last clip, we can also see another Ukrainian trident. This time with a bridge. Oh, it's the Kerch Bridge! Now that one's actually really cool. I love that one.
Like the burning Ukrainian trident going through the bridge. That's pretty impressive.
Man, that's actually cool. And it's got gears from a Russian jet engine as well. Really cool stuff, I gotta admit. But moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknowns, we also got to see a Bushmaster in Ukraine. I gotta say, these things are sick. We've seen these a lot, but it's always important to go back and look at all of the foreign support that Ukraine has gotten because these things have kind of disappeared into the background. Not a lot of people talk about the Bushmasters anymore. There's still a lot of them in service with Ukraine, and it's amazing to know that many people from Australia have constantly been supporting Ukraine and backing them, and that their government has been making sure to carry on the banner that the public wants to move forward, which is support for Ukraine. And we can see that that is shown in the Bushmasters that are there. So moving on from that into our next little bit, we also got to see a picture of the team that landed in Crimea the first time. And it appears to be a whole bunch of doivas. Look at them. They looking all fresh in the wetsuits and also with their little battalion the Stugna Battalion. Dude, they landed the Stugna Battalion in Crimea while I started my way through that. Talk about class. Impressive.
These guys got to create like a Heimar style song now that they're called the Student Battalion. Like Stugna.
Man, we come up with the same song every single time, don't we? We do that same tune. We go, we do that every single time.
That's all I know. That's all I know.
Man, all I know is boop, 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 boop. Okay, well, you didn't do the last part. You were supposed to go boop, boop, and I was going to be like, and then you didn't, so, oh.
Matt didn't get the memo.
But anyway,
no pun intended.
Man, I'm about to give you a memo, close memo. But anyways, moving on from that, great to see that these guys were out there doing their thing, and of course, amazing to see the faces blurred out of the guys who did it the first time. Moving on from that and into our next location unknown news clip, we got to see a MiG, and oh buddy, is it going to harm some people, because this got AGM-88 harms underslung on the wings. Pretty cool.
Impressive.
Look, an old Soviet MiG with modern Western missiles. That's what counts. But moving on from that into our last bit of location unknown news, we also got to see the Russian casualty report of the day. And
Ooh, wow.
Man, I gotta tell you.
Good. Man, I about choked just then while I was trying not to choke. They got good losses in every category today. 13 tanks. They got 18 APVs. Good lord. 3 Bobcats, most important of all.
3 Bobcats lost and smoking. But of course, great to see that they did lose 3 Bobcat skid steers. And not only that, the losses were also quite significant in every other category. 450 Russian soldiers were lost today, along with 18 armored personnel carriers, 30 supply trucks, 13 tanks, 47 artillery systems. Oh, and I forgot. You know what? I forgot to put some hype on that. 47 artillery systems. That is probably the highest number we have ever seen for the artillery. Almost 50. If we were to divide that down, I think that's something like 12 operational artillery batteries of the Russian army were wiped out today. If we're saying that there's 4 guns to every battery. Almost 12 of them were wiped out. That is huge. I can't even begin to say how big that is. That's unbelievably large. But 47 artillery pieces wiped out, 41 drones were destroyed, along with 1 MLRS and 1 cruise missile and 3 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, the losses today were impeccable. I would say they were even luxurious, but still wonderful to know that the Ukrainians were able to knock out such a large number of Russian forces, because that means that they are doing well on the front lines. And I gotta tell you, Maddie, are you dealing with all these little, like, gnat things in your room?
No, not me. I'm not.
Dude, these little gnat things keep flying around my room, like, in my face. One of them just tried to land on my eye. Like, it's, like, distracting the hell out of me over here. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see this cool little thing of an invisibility cloak. We actually made a short war summary on this today, and then a whole bunch of people wanted to tell me that this wasn't special, although I've never seen anyone use this on the front lines, so then we took the video down. And because it was largely true, but at the same time, no one on the front lines in Ukraine is using any kind of a thermal signature reducing camouflage, but you can see it being used by that Ukrainian soldier right there, which is pretty cool. And you see the other 2 guys over here. And we can see them showing off the cloaking ability of the whatever that kind of camouflage is. And you can see just a little bit of heat coming from the center of his body, and that's it.
What if it's not really like a cloaking device? What if it's just somebody's really cold-blooded?
Man, it's the lizard people. The liberal, the media.
Oh, no.
Oh no, dude, I literally did the voice too well. I threw the line out of me a little bit. The media, they're lying to you. They want you to think that these people are wearing some kind of a cloaking camouflage. They're actually some kind of a lizard people. They're lizard people, I tell you. They drink the blood of kids or something like that. You know, whatever the hell that guy says. But anyways,
no politics.
no politics, no politics. I'm sorry, everyone. No politics. Oh goodness. But anyways, moving on from that, you can see guy might be cold-blooded, or he's wearing some kind of a thermal reducing camouflage. Nevertheless, really cool. Moving on from that and on into the front lines themselves, we also got to see in the area near Drovchina today that Volodymyr Zelensky once again traveled to the front lines and met with some of the soldiers of Ukraine. Great to see him, of course, handing out more medals and making sure to, encourage the troops to keep on fighting and showing them that they are greatly appreciated, because I bet that means a lot to many of these Ukrainian soldiers who've been fighting here almost since the first day of the war. So, of course, absolutely incredible to see. Moving on from that and down the front lines into the area of Svatove and Zhumivka, we got to see a Russian tank hit here by the 66th Separate Mechanized Brigade, and they did it with none other than a Shtukna. We're going to be muting that.
I see some folks saying it's just a space blanket, like the cloaking thing they've got.
Man.
If it's just a space blanket, like that was just like somebody's been overlooking that for a long time, because like, who wouldn't have used that?
Man, well, probably because it looks like tinfoil. It's a giant reflective tinfoil sheet. I don't think anyone wants to look like a giant tinfoil sheet out there on the battlefield. But hey,
You just put it into the liner of a piece of clothing.
Perhaps. Actually, that's not that bad of an idea. I'm not gonna lie, that's not that bad of an idea at all. But
Quick, patent that.
quick, someone run to the patent office. But moving on from that, great to see that the 66th Brigade was able to knock out this Russian tank in the area just outside of Svatove, and hopefully they'll be able to make sure that that Russian tank continues to cook. Let him cook. Moving on from that and towards Kovalivka, we also got to see the pictures of a destroyed T-90M, otherwise known as the Breakthrough. And the only thing that's breaking through is the armor, and the ammunition exploding inside is breaking through the armor plating of the tank. But we can see the burned out remains of this T-90M here. Absolutely incredible, and absolutely scrumptious, because this means that the Russians have lost another $5 million main battle tank sitting in the middle of the fields of Ukraine, never to be used again. And that thing's burned through. There is no way to recover that tank. Moving on from that and into our next clip in the area, we also got to see the 63rd Brigade hitting Russian positions in the general area around that tank. Oh no. Well, we can see the giant Russian...
Bug life.
Man, it's more like Stugna life, you know what I mean? I'm so starving right now, man. Like, I'm so low energy. I'm not
Dang,
even
where'd
lying.
that come from?
Dude,
I'm like, thug life. I'm starving, man. I'm starving.
I'm like hyperglycemic or hypoglycemic, whatever it is over here right now. Like, I am starving to death. But we can see the Russians moving from Kamaz to Kamaz, and they're about to get mussed by the artillery, which we can see landing right here.
I'll tell you who's not starving. The Ukrainians. They're full. Like, after hitting a couple of these tanks, they're full. They don't even have an appetite anymore. They lost their appetite.
Oh, man, you know it. And we see them just slamming these guys here. I mean, they're slamming them good. Oh, cluster bombs. Nice little addition there. We see another cluster bomb heading towards the rear part of that group.
Peppered.
Man, call it paprika because they be putting on the salt and the pepper.
Man, I'm telling you, paprika, that's a little bit too high end for this situation. I think some pepper will do.
Man, you know, everyone always sits there and talks about, man, you know, I'm not, you know, and then they sit there and eat like fancy foods. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it, man. I'm completely at a loss. Because, like, paprika sounds so foreign. Like, I just have salt and pepper. Like, paprika is like a whole other thing, and I've heard it's just salt and pepper. But anyways, we can see another cluster bomb.
Well, you know what gets me is when people, like, go to the fancy restaurants and stuff like that, the real expensive ones with small portions, like a little snack or something like that for, like, $50. And they'll be like, can I have some of that paprika on this stuff? And they'll, like, come up with all these, like, fancy pronunciations, like, Walmart or Kroger or like let's see damn, what's another store? I can't even think of a store. Come on, man.
Toggle.
I read my own joke.
Toggle.
Toggle bar. McDonald.
Let's see. Wait. Or something like that. Man, we're just butchering words now. It doesn't even sound like it's a French accent or anything. But still, you can see the Russian unit still getting slathered in the meantime. And getting back to that joke, that is something that really does bother me. You know what else bothers me? Is that people would spend $200 a head to eat somewhere. That's just outrageous. Like, it's food. You know, like, I can only justify spending maybe $20 at most for a meal. And I feel like that's a luxurious meal at $20. Anything more than that's just crazy. Like,
all you're doing is feeding the chef, man. Because I guarantee you the chef isn't eating a portion that small. But he's feeding you that portion.
Man, chef be eating. Like,
man, the chef, he ain't hungry. Let's put it that way. He's giving you a morsel of what he had to eat.
Man, I'm telling you, man. He sits there and cooks up like this whole giant dish, and then he just cuts off a small part of it, slices on your plate, and goes, feed it to them. And then you eat like the tiny bit, but you bought the whole $200 dish.
Yeah. It's like you think Gordon Ramsay's eating little small morsels like that? Man, you see how hyped up he is? He wouldn't have energy to be like that if he didn't eat like good.
Man, you gotta eat well, man. You gotta
Oh,
eat.
I'm telling you. Oh, he's talking fast like that. Oh, he's definitely not eating small amounts. Oh, he's eating a lot. Oh my, I'm telling you.
It's pizza. But anyways, and still, yeah, I would have to agree. He's probably eating a whole lot because he's,
So back to what we were saying about Ukraine here. The Ukrainians, they're eating large portions. They're hitting vehicles left and right, and they're not eating the small portions. That's why you see they're very happy, they're very energetic, and they're winning this war because they don't eat small portions.
And that's true. And they eat very well on the front lines. Their logistics are well taken care of in that regard. And speaking of which, moving on from the area south of Sevastopol and into the Crimea forest, we got to see some pretty interesting happenings down here today as well. We got to see the Russians getting hit with a Mark 19, nonetheless. We can see the Russians down there in the tree line. We can see them getting hit. We can see some Russians running. Man, they're lining up. Oh, there goes half of them. I mean, there's half of them went to sleep. Half of them just clocked out. We can see the rest of them continuing to run through the woods. Oh, you see them getting slammed again. And guess what? They're about to get hit again. Watch this drive. Bam!
This place looks like the aftermath of a hurricane with like all the trees, like with the leaves taken off and everything.
Oh yeah, it does, doesn't it? And we can see the Russians running from it like a hurricane just hit them.
Dang, they're taking off, man. They are going.
Mine, I'm telling you. Mine, this is going terrible for them, man. Thank goodness gracious. They're running. They're running for the hills. Next thing you... But anyways, moving on from
Man,
that.
when you can't afford to license the music and you have to perform it yourself.
Oh, I know. Man, folks have got to appreciate it, man. I hope folks appreciate it. But anyways, moving on from that into the next clip, we also got to see some Russian artillery pieces getting hit in this area as well today, which was nice. Nice. Oh, we're going to be muting that. But when you see it's the 3rd Brigade, and what do we got here? We got a Mr. B. It really is a Mr. B. And they're about to blast it B. We see it's about to happen. It gets hit. It's boining. It's choining. There goes another hit on another Mr. B. Man, I wonder, Matthew, should we rename that artillery piece Mr. Beast?
Hell no. I'm good with Mr. B.
Man, Mr. Beast is pretty cool, but this sounds so much like Mr. Beast. Mr. B.
Mr. Beast wouldn't be this aggressive, like a piece of weaponry or something, unless he's on a podcast and he's just cussing like a sailor or something.
Well, man, I mean, hey, you got to do it sometimes, man. I mean, if there was an open mic after these streams, sometimes I'm telling you, sometimes.
And Mr. Beast switches up. He had to switch up on Mr. Beast is like hardcore. Like he goes from being like the all around like American lovely guy and stuff like that, like everybody like loves him and stuff like that, to when he goes on a podcast to just being like a straight up like sailor or something, like the way he's cussing. Like how does he switch it up like that?
Hey man, you gotta let loose sometimes. You gotta let it loose. But anyways, moving on from Crimea, which we did get to see the Russians taking some significant losses there. Not really a lot of frontline movement, however. And moving on down into the area of Sperne, we have a pretty interesting clip here. We got to see the K2's armored groups at work. And so, here is the clip. After the end of the active phase of the battle and the battle for Bermuda, small sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the enemy penetrated into the forest belt. The crew of the Kochevit tank went to work to prevent the buildup of the enemy's forces and their consolidation. And that's the tank we're seeing on film right here. We see it just going on its way, driving into town. We see it driving through the village. It's moving through with a general disregard for any enemy forces. I'm assuming that the village must be safe. Or they must have information that there are no anti-tank weapons that this unit has, and so the tank can practically roll right up onto them and be perfectly fine. They're still rolling. And also, by the way, Aaron, thank you so much for the support. We'll get to that here in a little bit in the last question segment, but we can see the tank rolling on forward through the village. We see it making it to the end, and we can see it firing, showing that the Russians are beyond the village, and that's why I was moving up safely. And we can see the tank's shot hit right out there. A smoke screen for masking tank fire. Very smart. When you see the tank's second shot hit in the same area of the tree line. We're about to see the third shot. Tank's right down here. It fires. Shell hits. That was actually a lot of travel time on that shell. Watch that, Matthew. Look. 1 Mississippi. 2. That was over a second of flight time.
That was a pretty long time. And 1 Mississippi, I mean, that's a long time.
Man, that is a long time. God bless the folks living up there in Mississippi. Boy, I gotta tell you, it's pretty rough up there right now. You ever wanted your drinking water to taste like poo-poo and look like it too? Well, let me tell you, friend, you're in luck. Introducing the all-new flood in the middle of the Mississippi state area. Your water is never going to taste right again. Always get the taste of raw sewage in your water because for some reason, everything got over-flooded during that flood. I don't know how it happens, but I guess that's why they call it a flood. But we can see that the position from the video is killing the forest strip, and they're doing a damn good job at it too. We can see the tank continuing to line up its targets and continue to destroy them with great impunity for the Russian forces that lie further down the forest line. We can now see the tank slowly rolling a little bit forward out of the village to continue to engage the Russian forces. We can see them hitting the same part of the tree line over and over and over. The kind of reliability that you would expect from a American-made pickup truck. But nonetheless, we can see that he's still continuing to hammer out a spot inside of that tree line that is going to ensure that the Russians feel a little holy by the end of it, and not in a religious kind of way. That's what we can see.
Like Swiss cheese, you know?
Man, they gonna be holier than Swiss cheese, man.
But you know, the Swiss won't give them any cheese because the Swiss said, no, we don't give away any weaponry.
Man, Swiss cheese is a weapon?
Man, it could be. I mean, you seen that Swiss cheese?
Man, I have, man. I think it's
Full of
good.
holes.
I think it's good. I'm not gonna lie. We see them continuing to fire. Just taking a break from the voice, going to let y'all have a chance to tell me y'all either like it or don't like it in the live chat to see if we're going to continue on. But we can see the tank still hammering the same spot in the tree line, apparently getting information that the Russian forces that are in that tree line are still in that same spot and apparently are pinned down by the tank's fire. The tank is continuing to fire in hopes that it will be able to destroy the Russian forces outright.
Really astonishing, really, how well they take out the enemy. It's rather egregious how they take them out. Tremendous and stupendous.
Oh dear, is that your house? Is that your house?
Could you take them out more expeditiously? Speed it up, would you? Go faster, peasant. Someone said, don't like.
Uh-huh.
Man, you gotta put in a full sentence.
Man. Some people love it. Some people don't. As always, a mixed bag. But when you see the Russian tank continuing to hit, well, I'm sorry, the Ukrainian tank continuing to hit the Russian tree line.
That wasn't Attenborough, by the way. If I get the point.
Damn, okay, it was that bad.
All
right.
Somebody misinterpreted the accent so bad they thought it was Attenborough. That was just supposed to be an aristocratic British person. That's all. I guess it would change your mind if you knew I wasn't trying to impersonate Attenborough.
Maybe. No, they're probably going to come back and say, it still sucks. Kill yourself or something like that. They're going to be like, hey, you can't say that. But anyways, we see the tank has now moved away, and since after a few days the enemy tried to repeat the entrenchment on these lines, a BMP-2 went out to prevent them from doing so, and we can see that BMP-2 laying down the fire right there onto the Russian positions. Man, Bike and its boy just turned into Bike and no boy. And what the hell is that? What the hell is even that? That is not a BMP-2. That is a BMP-1 with a BMP-2 gun. I've never seen that before in my life.
That's a BMP done.
Search one and
I
done.
like the shells falling out of it like that.
Yeah, look at that. Isn't that cool? Don't you like that? Don't you think it's neat?
A lot of smoke coming out of the interior compartment, though.
Well, man, they chuffing, they hotboxing.
Hotboxing that lead.
They legalized. Aw, man, chuff it up. Aw, man. But we can see the VP2 take a break from firing, and okay, so I see what's happened. Their hatch is open, so apparently this turret, of course, was not designed for the 2A42 autocannon, so there is a terrible ventilation issue. So a lot of the smoke from the shots are just going right back into the turret, and so they're leaving the hatch open for ventilation purposes to get all of that smoke out.
These guys are going to come out changed men by the time we get out of that lead box.
Man, they're going to be coming out and going, lead poisoning is a thing.
Coming out speaking a brand new language nobody's ever heard before.
Man, they're going to come out and they're going to go, man, I'm really digging some lead paint chips. How about you guys? Let's go get a snack.
For the Russians, they might come out more intelligent, maybe.
Well, these guys are actually Ukrainian that are in this BMP.
Well, then they'll come out definitely more intelligent because they're not stupid in the first place.
I don't know how that makes sense, but all right, I got you, man. I don't.
Damn, thanks. Thanks for the save. I appreciate it.
I don't know, man. I mean, that one wasn't really lining up, man. I was trying, man, but when you see the BMP firing towards that tree line, it's actually firing quite a distance, maybe about a mile. It's doing quite good, actually. Most of its shots are landing in the same spot.
What's up?
Go.
Man, that was so forceful.
Now, man, have you ever seen that meme where it's like the race car kid in the cartoon? And he's like, no, load my car first. And then the two people turn around and they went, go. It's like, what the hell is that noise? But when you see the BMP now racing away back through the village, making its way out, Ukrainians, of course,
they're leaving very intelligently because they're not, full of lead or anything.
Man, respect these guys, man. I respect these guys for dealing with the ventilation problems in that little BMP. It's got to be tough, like in reality, but they're making their way out.
Look at that guy's eyes. Did you see him? His eyes were wide, man. That lead had already gotten to him.
Let's see. Man, it was so quick. I can hardly see. Okay. All right. Oh, dang. Yeah, they were.
That dude's already fried from the lead, man.
Hang on. Let's see if we can get it. Dang. Look at that. Look at that. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It wouldn't show me the frame. Oh, my Lord. I'm pissed. Yeah, I could see it for literally like a split second. Yeah, the lead's already gotten to him, sadly. But he seems unfazed. And also, that's a really clean BMP. Did you just see that? The thing was literally like perfect. The Franken BMP. But still, they did a really good job for it being a Franken BMP, and great to see that they were able to stop the Russians in this area for some time. Moving on from that, I just saw that it is 10:40 now, and so we are going to have to start moving through the rest of these clips a lot quicker, because we are going to start running massively over time, even if I move through them quickly. Really quickly, I'm going to go over a frontline analysis with y'all, just to show y'all what's been happening in some parts of the front line over about the past 24 hours. Not really a lot of frontline advances have actually occurred for the Ukrainians or the Russians in any direction. You can see that right here. There's been a lot of frontline adjustments, however, on deep state, showing that ground has been firmly held for quite a while now, but beyond that, not really a lot of frontline advancements. Moving on from that and into the area of Klishkivka, we got to see the 3rd Brigade retaking a trench. Actually, really quickly, I'm going to err on the side of caution on that one and just tell y'all to go and click on the link in the description below for the day 588 map. Because to be entirely honest with y'all, we were probably going to be playing that Hot and Dangerous tonight, showing that clip. We were going to take a risk, but considering that we are running out of time, it's a good reason to not show something that may get us in trouble with YouTube. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see the Russians hitting a fake Buk surface-to-air missile defense system in the area around Konstantinivka. And we could tell it was fake because the way it exploded into pieces of wood chips. And so here's the clip. We can see the Lancet coming in to hit the Buk. And we can see it hit. And we can see wood chips go flying everywhere. So that was clearly a decoy that they just hit right there.
Nonetheless, it has been rebuked successfully.
And so that's the end of the clip. Great to see that they were able to destroy a fake Buk, because that means a real one was saved. Moving on from that and into the area of Pervo-Majske, we also got to see a picture of the Polish Volunteer Corps. And it looks like they were just chilling. Love to see it. Really cool. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one, out of Donetsk, and on down in the southern front near Novopercherkivka, where we got to see a burnt-out Mr. S, as opposed to Mr. B. There's the Mr. S, burned out, absolutely destroyed. This is actually the back plate of the front part of the turret right there that you're seeing. The rest of the turret was disintegrated in the explosion. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, and I call that trench art. Moving on from that and into our next little clip, we also get to see a massive convoy of Ukrainian M113s in the area on the move. And look at them go. All of them are waving Ukrainian flags, little armored boxes. Much fun.
Man, if only they had some marching music behind this, then it would be perfect.
That's
not
that. That's not marching music.
They'd be much better off if they put like their own like marching music behind the stuff instead of the garbage like popular culture tracks behind all the war footage.
Man, every single side has done that so far. The Russians do that too. Like they sit there, and they have like some I don't know what it is, man. I'm honestly not a fan of any of the music that's played on these clips. Y'all know my tastes. It's not that. But we can see all of these M113s all have a racing stripe. And I gotta respect it. They are looking for speed. Hopefully they'll get it sometime. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip. Nice to see a little convoy on the move. And we're now going to be moving on into our next clip, where we also got to see Huilipol, where we got to see a Russian prisoner exchange, or more so some Russians being added to the prisoner exchange. And here you go. Hope we're going to be muting that.
Another popular culture track for you, Epic Trains Canada.
Oh man, and with that, that's the end of that clip, but great to see that they got some more Russian prisoners in a fairly high amount. Moving on from that clip and into the area of Rebolne, we also got to see the remains of a destroyed T-72B3 that a Ukrainian was playing around with, and a BTR-82 with a Ukrainian flag flying in the distance. There's the Ukrainian flag, there's the T-72B3 right there, with its turret right behind it. And when you see the Ukrainians digging a ditch.
A grave, perhaps.
And also a destroyed BTR-82 right there. Yeesh!
Yeah, for that right there. They're going to put it right in the grave.
Sheesh! But moving on from that, nice to see the Russian losses in that area. And on into our next clip, we also get to see a small grad, a truck grad, firing off its rockets in the area. This was a part of the 108th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade. We're going to be muting the action music, but we can see the little grad moving forward. We see them getting ready to fire it. You see it's ready to fire, and it's about to fire.
Nice
we now see
slow-mo,
fire.
man. They got some expensive cameras out here to catch that kind of slow motion frame rate.
Man, that thing be high quality. You know what I mean? Sheesh! But anyways, we see the missiles landing and impacting, and of course, absolutely wonderful to see. But with that, that's the end of the clip, and we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into the area, and let me make sure, of Kyiv, to cover the speech of President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 588 of the war. I pray it is a long speech. No!
What's that short speech?
It's
Can we
short.
have some speech?
It's short. Oh no! I was hoping to try and get a snack or something. I'm literally starving to death, but here's the clip.
No soup for you.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Короткий звіт за цей день.
Були різні наради, серед головних нарада з керівником ГУР змістовно. Про хороші речі для України, дещо важливе в безпекових питаннях нам вдалося. Деталі пізніше. На селекторі сьогодні була доповідь керівника СБУ щодо протидії колаборантам. Теж змістовно, та й взагалі є за що подякувати нашим хлопцям із Служби безпеки сьогодні. Важливі операції, а головне результативні. Молодці. Провів нараду з урядовцями. Вчора про неї домовились в Харкові. У нас є різні урядові програми щодо відновлення, щодо допомоги регіонам та людям, які втратили будинки. Є робота по відбудові соціальної сфери та фізичному захисту об'єктів енергетики. Щодо таких питань доручив підготувати детальний звіт. Ми робимо все, щоб дати Україні більше систем ППО перед зимою. І зараз, до речі, очікуємо певні рішення від наших партнерів. Але вся робота в регіонах, яка стосується фізичного захисту критичних об'єктів та термінової відбудови, повинна бути проведена максимально за час до зими. Сьогодні була важлива розмова з президентом Азербайджану Алієвим. Я подякував за надану нашій державі гуманітарну допомогу, зокрема для нашої енергетики. Підтвердили нашу спільну відданість принципам територіальної цілісності та захисту державного суверенітету. Обговорили наші погляди на глобальні та регіональні формати безпеки загалом на безпекову архітектуру. І сьогодні ж відзначив державними нагородами наших турецьких друзів, посла Туреччини в Україні, який активно взаємодіє з нашою державою, плідно та потужно зміцнює особисто наші відносини. Працює, зокрема, над реалізацією формули миру. А також нагородив керівника турецької компанії «Онур», яка активно працює з нашою державою, інвестує, створює робочі місця та допомагає обороні. Вдячний за підтримку. Ну і готуємось до активної міжнародної роботи. І цей тиждень, і наступний тиждень мають бути для України результативними. Постійно додаємо нашим воїнам сили. Слава Україні!
And
Heroes Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 588 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that's moving us on into the next part of the show. The halftime show is over. And that means something new. That means something big. We're about to be going into that old question segment. We're about to be answering all the questions that y'all have tonight, both in Super Chats and in live chats. I have to remind y'all once again that if you do want to support the channel, you can throw in a Super Chat. It does help us out. But you can also throw in a live chat as well. There is no cost in watching this channel. You do not have to think there is. It's entirely up to you whether you support the channel or not. Beyond that, you know, it's kind of your thing. But if you want to ask a live chat question, just throw in an @EnforcerMatt and then ask your question. So that way Matthew can see the question because it highlights it for him when you put @EnforcerMatt at the front of it. And then he'll put it into the spreadsheet so that way we can answer it later. So just wanting to put that out there up front because some people think that you actually have to throw in a super chat to be able to ask a question. That is not the case. The channel has always been free to watch. It's also free for us to answer you. There is no paywall to anything. But if you do support the channel, you do get your question answered first. And we also recognize every single individual, no matter how big the support is, whether it's $1, whether it's $500, everyone gets recognized and everyone gets thanked for their support because it helps the channel to keep rolling. And that's how we make this a job. But with that, take it away, Matthew.
And also, feel free to hit that like button as well, because you could become a changed person if you hit that like button. And also, you could leave your mark on the stream, because, for example, if it goes from 1.7 thousand likes to 2,000 likes all of a sudden, just think, you could have a part in that. Join. But anyways, moving on to our first poll. It says, do you think Ukraine is going to do something drastic to help gain more international support? It looks like 49% said, yes, it's likely going to happen. 15% said unsure. 19% said, probably not, but possible. And 18% said, no, Ukraine won't do anything drastic. And for me, I think Ukraine is going to do something drastic, not in a bad way, like, you know, they're not going to start like World War III or something to make sure they get support. But I think they will do something pretty large, perhaps maybe going down to Crimea and launching an invasion down that way. That is one option, even though it may not seem totally realistic right now. That is one option they have, or doing something else, perhaps to get the support flowing back to Ukraine. I personally think that they might be wise to do that because with support sort of faltering the way it is, something needs to change quickly to make sure that Ukraine has guaranteed support down the road and that people don't suddenly start forgetting about the people suffering and dying inside of Ukraine that are totally innocent and are being persecuted by Russia for simply being Ukrainian. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I think that they're probably going to be trying something major here soon, especially considering that foreign support, at least at the moment, is a little bit odd, at least how it's normally been occurring. I think they will be possibly trying something big towards the area of Crimea here, but who knows, because they're currently running into some difficulty near the area of Robotne, but hopefully that can be overcome and they can start blitzing the area and eventually get to Crimea. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says Putin plans on announcing his candidacy to the presidency soon. And what are your thoughts on that? 42% said he'll probably only get 99.5% of the vote this time. 33% said I think he's going to win this one. I have a feeling. 5% said unsure. And 20% said the opposition is dying to win. And yes, they are dying to win. All of them are. More so than any other country in the world. They're all dying to win. Personally, me, I think he's probably going to win this one. I don't know why. I just kind of have a hunch. Maybe it's because nobody is actually running against him, or maybe it's because everybody that runs against him happens to drink some tea that has gone bad. But, you know, that's just me. Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I think he's probably going to win again. You know, when you think about it, he's been the president or the prime minister of Russia since 2000. I think even before that. But no one's really contradicted his rule. So I think he'll probably be around again. Kind of would be shocked that he'd lose an election. You know, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, he probably won't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
It could be close.
I have to make it sound like it's a little bit contended, but no, he's going to win outright. It's going to be a landslide. Everyone in Russia loves him, and if they don't love him, they're dead. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
You know, there's actually 6 people running for presidency in Russia. Are you aware of the candidates?
No, because they're all dead already. They already.
No, they're actually all alive.
Well, yeah,
like there are 6 people running. Like it's Putin clone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Well, not really. I mean, like some of them will never win. Like the candidate for the Communist Party, he's never going to win.
That was a joke. That was a joke. You didn't catch it. Putin clone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are running.
Oh,
you know, it's clones.
Oh, now I get it.
Oh,
I get it, man.
That's that hangry situation.
Man, that's that hangry, man. I could eat a dog right now, man. I mean, like,
whoa.
Man, she was looking a little tasty out there, man. That little chicken tender leg. But anyways, I'm just kidding, y'all. I don't eat the dogs. I love my dogs. I never do that. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well. Hopefully, y'all believe me. I don't eat dogs. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our super chat questions. We have a lot of really good ones to address. And up first, we have one from Aaron Cooper, who very generously throws in a $50 donation. And he says, do a double tap. F-16s for everyone.
And I gotta thank you so much for your support, Aaron Cooper, and putting in the double tap. The double tap is probably one of the best strategies that the United States has ever implemented because, while it's a little controversial, it does ensure that the guy we were going for is God. So it's pretty good for that. I gotta admit, you know, a little bit of downsides to it, but you know, it's got its ups. Everything's got its ups and downs. But still, thank you so much for the support, Aaron Cooper, and helping this channel to keep on running. And why not give everyone an F-16? Why not be the Oprah Winfrey of the world? You get an F-16, and you get an F-16, and you get an F-16. Give them all. Give them all. I say, why not? I mean, hell, what's the worst thing that could happen? Nothing. Nothing could ever happen bad out of that. And so, I hope that does address that fairly well, Aaron Cooper. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because folks like you helped to make this thing possible. And I just heard Commander COVID said that he did eat a dog in Korea. And why?
Eek.
But why would you eat a dog in Korea? Why? Why would you do it? Why would you do it? Why? I mean, that's something else. Why would you do it? Matthew, blast that bot. Thank you. But
Man, get out of here.
get the hell out of here. Like, man,
Man, you gotta be like that dude that was in that courtroom, the guy that was like defending himself, and he was like
because
defending
y'all
himself in a murder
think I'm
trial.
playing with y'all.
You gotta start off calm and go like easy and stuff. Like, I'm telling you, can you be a little bit more civil in the damn live chat? Like like the last part of the sentence.
Guys, fellas, I've got to tell you, I know we all have opinions here, but my opinion's gonna be the right one. But anyways, they just came in. Just in case y'all are wondering, like, what's the beef? What's the tea on that one? They said enforcers attempt to mock the German language. How in the world are we mocking the German language? That's a part of comedy. If you can't get comedy, which pokes fun at everything, get lost. I don't want you around, and they won't be around. They got banned. So, anyways, because y'all think I'm playing with. Anyways, I gotta stop screaming in the mic because I know I'm busting people's eardrums out. Nevertheless, why not give an F-16 to everyone? What could go wrong? You know, I don't really think much can go wrong, because if we are able to give a country an F-16, they're probably advanced enough and stable enough that nothing really could go wrong. That can't be said for other kinds of weapon systems. For example, Stingers. Some of y'all probably know this. Probably a lot of y'all know this. We actually ended up giving Stingers to the Pakistanis in the 70s and 80s. Then they would hand those over to the Mujahideen across the border in Afghanistan, and the Mujahideen used it against the Soviet Union. It was a great idea at the time, but it ended up biting us in the butt just about 10 years after the war ended, when we ended up invading Afghanistan because a lot of terrorist forces were operating out of Afghanistan. And a lot of people say that that's not true nowadays, but that's entirely true, especially considering that the Mujahideen, or the Taliban as they were then called, were kind of sponsoring a lot of terrorists out there. You know, it's kind of a thing you can't really avoid. I mean, you know, when the Taliban love Al-Qaeda and they say, Al-Qaeda, you can come here and hang out if you want. And then Osama bin Laden is actually in Afghanistan at the time. You know, he fled later, but he was there at the time. It's like you can't really go and say, oh, you know, like it wasn't a terrorist hotbed. We went there for no reason. We did go into Afghanistan for a reason. Iraq, though, you know, that's another story. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I don't even know how in the world I got into that, Aaron Cooper, but nevertheless, I think F-16 should be given to everyone. Why not? And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Animate Z, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for that support as well. And they said, according to PBS, U.S. manufacturers have been using Swiss companies as loopholes from sanctions to sell equipment to Russia, ? And PBS News report for more details aired yesterday, and Slava Ukraini.
And thank you so much for the support, Animate Z. I have not heard of that before, actually, because sadly I don't get to watch a lot of videos out there outside of our own thing. Actually, I'm kind of lying about that. I do, but usually only when I'm driving from law school and back. And most of those nowadays are Mark Felton videos. I know all of y'all know Mark Felton. He's got 2 million subs. It's a great channel. And I've been listening a lot to the stories of the final days of Nazi Germany down in the area around, what's that place called? Berchtesgaden, something like that. It's down here near Salzburg. I think it's right here. Somewhere around here. Wait, hang on. I think this is the place. Is it? Hang on. Hold up, y'all. Now I'm actually curious. Where the hell is it? And Matthew just immediately went, move on. But we can't, man. We can't. I gotta find it. I can't find it. You know what? I'm giving up. It's going to be a rabbit hole that no one wants to go through. But anyways, I do thank you so much for the support. And sadly, I haven't heard about that. But that's something I have been listening to a good bit of some videos, but sadly not PBS ones like that. But with that, I will try and look into it and get some more information so I can be more knowledgeable about that, because it's probably entirely possible that the Swiss are being used as a loophole, considering that they are strictly neutral, even in the economics. But wait a minute, at the same time, though, the Swiss have laid out economic sanctions themselves against the Russians. They haven't been economically neutral, and they've also seized Russian assets inside of Swiss banks. So I don't really know. I mean, maybe that is possible. But I'll have to look into it a lot more and see what the case is with that. But thank you so much for sharing that with us, Animate Z, so that way I can know about it, to look into it. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, Slava Ukraini. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sick Lid, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Sick Lid, as well, for that support. They said, my emergency alert was in Spanish. And did anyone else have this happen? And can't wait for the two enforcers run for the White House so they can fix this doo-doo pile. And I actually didn't hear any words like when the sound went off. It was just that ominous tone that they always put on all the emergency sounds and stuff like that. But I never heard anyone speaking or anything. I just saw the professor nearly pass out from like being horrified from it. Apparently he wasn't in the loop. But yeah, it was loud. Like when you got 50 phones going off in one classroom, that's a loud sound. But didn't hear any Spanish. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think he meant it was speaking Spanish. I think it was just like written in Spanish.
I took it as it was actually spoken in Spanish.
I took it as it was written in Spanish. This is the Schrodinger's super chat. Is it speaking Spanish or is it writing Spanish? But still, thank you so much for the support, Cichlid. And mine wasn't in Spanish; it was in English. But I don't know. Maybe other people did have it happen. Say it in the live chat if you did, because I bet that would be pretty bizarre, especially for a lot of y'all who may not have any Spanish interfaces on your phone. But that would be cool to know if it did just happen to other folks. But still, thank you so much once again for support, helping the channel to keep on running. And one day we will be able to run for the White House. Of course, when I will be able to, will be in the year 2040, way down the line, about 17 years from now. And I've got to say, hopefully by then, things will be different. You know, of course, can't get political, and if we even say anything about American politics, it's got to be fair on both sides. We got to critique or praise both sides equally. I'm not really a big fan of either side at the moment, right now at all. And so hopefully in the future,
Trust me, it's gonna be different. Trust me.
hopefully it will be different in a good way. And by that point, maybe I'll be able to run the way I actually want to run in 17 years' time. I'm hoping that a decent amount has changed enough that doing what I would want to do, I'd actually be considered a viable candidate. And hopefully people wouldn't be going, that sounds boring. You know, like when I talk about, you know what, let's make expiration dates standardized. Let's start putting a lot more into transportation. Maybe shave down the military budget just a little bit to give a couple of dozen billion to transportation. You know, hopefully people would be going, what are you, crazy? You know, hopefully that wouldn't be the case. Because I have some pretty good plans, some pretty good ideas. But most of them are nothing that anyone talks about in the current political sphere right now. It's most of the things that should be talked about, but nobody talks about. The things that would actually affect y'all in y'all's day-to-day lives, instead of just a moralistic standpoint that affects a very small group of people of society, no matter what the topic is. And so...
Well, y'all will know where to find me while the enforcer's running for president. You can find me in court, suing people, suing for people, defending people, etc. And you know, maybe one day it'll be the enforcer law firm, or maybe it'll be just maybe one enforcer law firm, perhaps. But you know, if you ever have any defamation complaints, come see me in a few years.
Man, we're gonna be experts in that, man. Shit, we're gonna be experts.
Man, that's gonna be my main field of occupation for long.
Man, I got to tell you, we're gonna have a return client too, over and over and over, maybe. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And Jeff Lieberman said, Esquire. Oh, wow. I've never understood the word Esquire. Like attorneys, like some of them, not all of them, will put ESQ for Esquire behind their name. Every time I see that, I just think in my mind, like, I'm like, I don't know if you look at that and you think that looks pretty cool, or you think that looks kind of a little bit extra, you know, like some people that demand to be called doctor. Like, I understand that you work for it and stuff like that. And technically, you can call an attorney doctor as well as you have a Juris Doctorate. But I don't know. It's always rubbed me the wrong way when people demand to be called doctor if somebody gets it wrong by accident. But just a small pet peeve. I have no idea why I went off on that rabbit hole. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have one from Drunky Monkey, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Here I'm Slava, and long live the LSA. And please do me a favor, look up Cat Chonk Chart and take a live chat, please."
And thank you so much for the support, Drunky Monkey. And we will make sure to pull up the Cat Chonk Chat. So let me go to the Cat Chonk Chat. Chonk Chat. I have a feeling I'm about to see some stuff here. Images. We've got it, Matthew. We've got it. Let me go find one that looks quite good. Here we go. A fine girl.
Gonk.
She chonk. A heckin' chonker.
Oh,
Hefty
heckin' chonker, man. That's what those folks on Reddit be saying. Heckin' chonker.
Oh, look, it's a heckin' chonker. Mega chonker. I guess it's like a mega chat or whatever the hell it is. And then, oh, Lord, she coming. So we got them all right here. We got them all. And I gotta say, pretty interesting little shot right there. Pretty interesting, I gotta say. I don't actually own cats. And funnily enough, I'm actually slightly allergic to cats. But I love them. I think they're really cute, really neat. They're also very nice most of the time, at least to me. And also, thank you, Drunky Monkey, for sharing the chonk shot. I didn't even know they had this quantified in some kind of a scale, but nevertheless they do. And there be some heckin' chonkas out there in the world, I'm telling you. But at the same time, oh Lord, she coming! But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And Matthew, if there's a mega chonker, kind of like there is a mega chat or whatever the hell it is, where in the hell does the incel fit in on this chart?
They excel.
Man, you know, incel sounds like dry cell battery.
Yeah, dry cell battery. I'm not an expert on batteries, so I guess I'll go with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right then. Okay. 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 Don't know what a battery is. Okay. I mean, like a AA battery, but all right. That's fine. Do you, man? I'm just playing with you, by the way. But anyways, thank you so much once again for support, Drunky Monkey. I hope you enjoyed that fairly well. Us reviewing the chunk chart. And with that, we're on to the next.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Marion Deemer. And thank you very much, Marion, as always, for that very generous support. And she said, hugs to you guys, and you cannot mock the German language. It sucks.
Whoa.
And Marion, I gotta say, one thing that drives me nuts is when people get so offended about simply making a joke about something. We joke about the South because the South obviously has a certain thing going on with it. You hear people kind of like us sometimes that have kind of that Southern redneck accent going on occasionally. And, you know, if you can't laugh at certain things, what does that say about you? Like, what does that say about a person? They apparently don't have a very fun life if they can't laugh at certain things, but you got to laugh it off. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Marion, and helping the channel to keep running. I gotta say that is incredibly important. I thank you so much for taking the effort to support our channel, and also thank you for supporting us there. But I do have to say one thing: German language doesn't suck. I think all languages in the world are really cool, and I'm not just saying that to have a caveat there and be like, oh, not to piss off our German viewers, but it really is a cool language. Every language in the world is cool, and I wish I had the time to try and learn a lot of them, like that Jalma NYC guy on YouTube who knows like every language on earth. I think that's a really cool thing. I wish I was like him in that way. But I would have to say this as well. A lot of people get offended over a lot of stuff. Like, like we make fun of the South. We are Southerners. So when we make fun of the South, like Matthew said, we are making fun of ourselves for the most part. And then people act like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, when we do, like East Malibu said, what's the South thing you guys say? Oh, we make fun of, like how bad off the South is. It's like, it's not like the richest part of the country. We make fun of that. We make fun of our accents down here, the rednecks and the hillbillies, stuff like that. We make fun of all kinds of crap. We make fun of the British, the Germans, the Americans. We make fun of every kind of American, every kind of Canadian, every kind of person everywhere. It's equally applied. It doesn't make any sense to me when people come in here and they want to get offended over just the one thing against them. Like, for example, I'm sure that many of y'all know of that one person out there that absolutely hates our guts now that used to be here. And they used to come here and they would say, hey, do this funny voice of this certain guy. And I'd do it. I mean, I make fun of the hell out of the certain person that they wanted us to make fun of. Because it's just funny. Like, I don't care if you like the guy or not. It's just hilarious to make fun of him. And so then now they hate us. And now that was a bad thing for us to joke about that guy's voice. Because for us to even do it, we're obsessed with him. And then we do like the other guy as well, who's literally on the opposite side. But that's beside the point. They've got to be offended over something. So that's something that we deal with a lot. And I got to thank you so much for backing us up on that, Marion, because it's always annoying to see people come in and be annoyed over jokes. They are jokes. Like, if you can't handle a joke, you probably got some bad issues in life beyond our joke that you need to be looking inwards towards and seeing what's wrong where you can't handle the joke,
Especially when you tell the intent behind it is a jovial intent. And now, if somebody said it with, like, some hatred behind it, with like, oh, man, I can't stand that German language. I can't stand the German. That's a little bit different. But, if you can't come in and tell that we're being pretty lighthearted about most stuff, that means they haven't listened for very long, and they also jump to judgment.
Yeah, and especially, and another thing is that we'll make fun of so many people. We make fun of everyone. We make fun of the Chinese. Everyone, you name the group, we've made fun of them at this point. Hell, we've even made fun of some Ukrainians here and there. It's just what we do. It's a part of joking around. But at the same time, I still have a massive respect for all of the countries we joke about, and massive respect for their culture as well. I mean, hell, if you tell me where you're from in Germany, I'll go there and say a cool fun fact or a little historical tidbit about your city or something. It's what we do. I don't know why people get offended about that. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping the channel to keep on running, because folks like you make it possible for us to be able to joke like this. Because if folks like you didn't support us and didn't help this channel to keep on running, we would have to run ads, or we would have to have sponsors, and then we would have to curtail a lot of our jokes like those, and we wouldn't be able to make them. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $15 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, and thank you very much, Margaret, for that support as well. She says, put this toward the parking fund, and will it pay for 1 hour? And rabbit hole, if you have time. What do you guys think about the F&P 90 submachine gun from Belgium? Interesting shape, or live chat question.
And I thank you so much for the support. A very good rabbit hole, because I love talking about small arms. I think they're great. I think they're neat. I think they're really cool. And first off, thank you for the support. It actually won't pay for a single minute of parking because we get parking passes. So we have to pay for all of the parking up front at the very beginning of the semester. And I forgot how much that costed, Matthew. I think it was like $70 or something like that.
I think it was something like that. It was cheaper than undergraduate parking.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, what, $250 for a parking pass there? Well, no, 500 or something like that.
That's about the only thing that's cheap there, I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you. And it really was. Oh, well, I was waiting for you to start there. You went, oh, and then you laughed. So like, okay. But as far as the FNP 90 goes, and let me go pull up a P90. I think they're great. Probably one of the few bullpups that I like, because it's nice, it's good, it's a solid little submachine gun. Or yeah, it is a submachine gun mostly. Here's a picture of one. They're just so unique and so bizarre. Like, they're very ergonomic, though. I mean, the ergonomics on this thing are probably the best out there, with the way these little grooves fit your hands perfectly, the way it shoulders up against you. It's incredibly short, unbelievably short. It's probably like the length of 2 Glock 17s, I would say. That's an American form of measurement. They're good. I really like them. So I hope that answers that. Also, the 5.7 round that it shoots has like no recoil. Even with this thing being very lightweight, there's practically no recoil to it. And also, this is the one that you can buy here in the States. This is a PS90 because it has an extended barrel, so that way it's ATF compliant and has something longer than a 16-inch barrel. So I hope that does address that fairly well. I'd still say this, though, that if you're really wanting a rifle, and this kind of is a rifle with a 16-inch barrel, it may as well be one, and it is classified as one. If you wanted a rifle, though, I would not get one that shoots a 5.7 round because that's a pistol caliber. I would go for something that shoots 5.56, maybe 308, or 5.45, even if you were wanting to get into AKs. Because those have more penetrating power, they can punch through more, and I think that's very important when you're talking about rifles. You don't want a rifle that can only punch through pistol caliber stuff. You want a rifle that is a rifle that has rifle power behind it. But beyond that, very good little SMG right here. Very neat, very cool. And I'd recommend one if you have the ability to get one. They are very expensive, though. I think they're like $2,200 right now for a PS90. I don't think the price is dropping anytime soon, so you'll probably be investing even at that steep price, because I think it'll only appreciate from here on. But still, really cool little gun, and I hope that does answer that fairly well and go down a good rabbit hole. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jesus UCSB.
Yo!
Who puts in a $20 donation. He says, "Hola, this tanker is tired like Gordo from Fury. Ha ha ha. LC. Oh, and who wants smoke? Who wants smoke?" He said, "LC Commander."
And thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB, and welcome tonight. And thank you so much for supporting the channel and helping us to keep it running. And also, I actually didn't watch the movie Fury. Like, I wanted to back when it came out, back in 2016, but I was too young, and so I didn't get to watch it, and then I just never watched it. But still, thank you for the support, and interesting here that you're tired like Gordo. And who want the smoke? Man, nobody wants to smoke from you, Jesus CCSB. You dish it out, and you dish it out well. People are scared.
I listened to that song, Jesus, that you said to listen to, that you get the quote from right there. And that was a very interesting song, very violent song, and a very foul song. A rap song, very hardcore trap. And I didn't know Jesus listened to that. That is definitely a curveball, I must admit. But yes, now I know what Jesus means behind who wants smoke. He means who wants smoke.
Man, well, I thank you for the support, Jesus CCSB. And also, he do be giving out the smoke. That's why no one wants it, Matthew. I was trying to hint at that, and then you started getting a little bit more direct at that, but that's why nobody want the smoke.
He wants smoke.
Man, he gonna be giving the smoke. That's it, man. Call this man the Signal Corps because he's putting out smoke signals. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Jesus. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for being our LSA tank commander, and also being a long and serviced member of the U.S. Army. I think that's incredibly cool. It was very cool to show your picture on stream last night, and I thank you for being here with us tonight and helping us to keep this thing running, because folks like you help us to make this possible on a day in and day out basis. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that being said, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $12 donation, and he has the animal noises. He says, ba booba, quack, ba, kangaroo noise, Matt, hide the dogs, enforcer hungry, ba ba, gizalik for liking, ba moo, quack, oink, ba ba, moo, woof, ruff, oh my, I'm telling you, ba ba, Tweety bird, ba ba, moo, oh man, oh man.
Oh man, I'm telling you. And thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And kangaroo noise? I don't know. I hope that's a kangaroo noise. I don't know. I've never heard one. But still, the dogs don't need to be hidden. They're right outside of my room. They're safe out there. I know they are until I get out of this room. I hope that does address that part really well. And Matthew, I gotta say, Matthew, you know, I'm starting to feel something come over me. You schlägt my like me, don't you? Volker Reichsminister. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. If y'all are wondering, what am I saying when I say that? It's literally gibberish. I just make it sound like it's supposed to be something. But still, thank you so much.
Man, I'm just waiting for somebody to take that out of context and say, look what they're saying.
Oh, you know it's going to happen.
Waiting for it.
You know it's going to happen. Because everything we do now, we can breathe at this point. We're evil for breathing, according to that person. So it will happen eventually. But it's a joke. You know, like, everyone on the channel knows that it is a straight up joke making fun of that guy. So if you take that out of context, you truly are just a lying idiot at that point. And watch, you'll now take it out of context just for that, just to try and prove a point. But anyways, thank you so much once again for throwing in the animal noises, Duncan VR, while we get distracted there for a moment. Folks like you help this channel to keep on running. And if it wasn't for folks like you who support the channel, we wouldn't be here right now. And so thank you so much once again for throwing in those traditional animal noises, and once again, helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much. Hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Local 433 Gumby, who says, Enforcer Matt, the Black Sea Fleet is consolidating for better defense, but they suck, and it's a futile attempt.
And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support. And I'd have to agree that consolidating for better defense is a bad idea. They were already consolidated in Sevastopol, but I think moving them to Novorossiysk is not really going to help much except for the Storm Shadow range ordeal. But even then, how a Ukrainian Su-24 could just fly low through the lines, pop up, fire off its missile, and then leave, and then it will be within range. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because I'd have to agree with you there. It doesn't really help them out much, rather than the Storm Shadow thing. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to L.E. Paul85, who puts in a $10 donation. It says, watching from a cruise ship in Aruba, or Curacao area, and no alerts on my phone today. Tee-hee. But already knew about the alert last week, though, and keep up the good work.
And thank you so much, Les Paul, for the support. I love to hear that you're enjoying a nice vacation at Aruba. And still, oh my god, that fly just flew right into my eye. I'm getting so pissed off with these flies, man. They're everywhere.
Kill it.
I have been killing them. I've killed 4 of them during the show, and they still keep on showing up. I don't know where they're coming from. And they're in other parts of the house. I don't know what's up with that. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support. And really cool to know that you're actually so dedicated to our show that you're watching from Aruba on a cruise ship. That's actually really cool and high praise. I gotta thank you for enjoying our channel enough while this thing flies in my eye again. And helping this channel keep on rolling, and also watching us while you're here, like on a cruise ship. Let's see. No alerts on my phone. Lucky you, because there was a literal panic going on all across law school today when that alarm went off. I had to be like, calm down, everyone. It's just a drill. Calm down. I was the only one who knew what was going on, it seemed, but still. Thank you so much once again for the support, and I'm glad that everyone knew about it on this channel. It was shared around a lot just the days leading up to it, and I'm glad that no one got panicked or freaked out here from what I know. But still, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for encouraging us to keep up the good work, because your support helps us to make this thing possible. And so with that, hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and oh man, Pizza Chef. Oh no, man, I hope not. But anyways, moving on to our last super chat of the night. We have a $5 donation from Neil Vizanon, who says, I agree with y'all about the comedy, and probably can't do it with copyright, but can you play the Duckman comedy rant? Funny and completely true, and do a chat. And Neil, that's funny you mentioned copyright, because we're having some major problems with copyright violations of other people stealing our content on YouTube, and I have a feeling y'all will be hearing about that very loudly over the next 24 hours. But we're obviously having to take action to protect our copyrights. It's a shame we have to do it, but you know, it's got to be done. But back to what you were saying, Enforcer, what say you?
And I would say that I gotta thank you for the support, but sadly, we can't really show that kind of stuff on stream, because if we were just to show the rant in its entirety without providing any commentary or making it transfigurative to what it is, meaning that we change it around or use it for parody or something, we would most likely be in violation of copyright laws. A lot of people come onto this channel, and a lot of y'all have probably seen them. They usually leave fairly quickly because we boot them. But a lot of people come on and go, oh, the Enforcer just loves to hear himself talk. And no, actually, it's a deliberate thing. When we talk over clips and we just go and describe everything going on inside of them, it actually makes sure, it ensures that our usage of that clip, as long as we're not playing any copyrighted audio like music, is falling completely within Title 17, which outlines what fair use is. We're using the clip and its actual contents for commentary, documentary, and news purposes, which all three of those reasons are separate clauses of fair use. So we are making sure when we do that to entirely fall in fair use. We sadly can't do something like that if we show something and we don't commentate on it and we just let it play. We would be in violation of that person's copyright. And so sadly, Neil, I thank you so much for the support and backing us up on the comedy side of things, but we wouldn't be able to show that because copyright law is actually very serious. A lot of people take it as a joke, but when you're in violation of copyright law, it is also transformative. Thank you, Drunky Monkey, for clarifying that. I said transfigurative. That's not the case. It's transformative. But a lot of people are very ignorant about how serious copyright law is. Copyright law is incredibly serious, and that's why you see at the beginning of a lot of movies when you buy them on DVD, there's usually that little FBI warning that pops up that says, if you pirate, which is infringing on a company's copyright, this movie, you could be subject to a $250,000 fine or a certain amount of time in prison. It is a felony. And so YouTube is actually very, very light with how they deal with copyrights compared to how the law actually deals with copyrights, especially things like piracy, and trying to just redistribute someone's independent works and everything on their own. But still, with that, I hope you understand, Neil, why we can't show that, because we always want to try and make sure to play by the book when it comes towards copyright law and make sure that when we're showing things, it is within the realm of fair use. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that further well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, we're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Jesus UCSB once again, who puts in a $5 donation and says, LSA, last night's show was epic. Who wants smoke? Who wants smoke? Jesus loves you.
And thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB, and thank you for enjoying last night's show too. We try and make every single one of them good. I've got to be honest, tonight's not meeting my standard. I'm starving, so I know that I'm not hyped up enough and not hitting the right cues well. So sorry about that, everyone. But still, thank you so much for enjoying last night's show, and of course supporting us tonight and helping us to keep this thing running. And I don't want the smoke, Jesus. I don't want the smoke. I want to avoid the smoke entirely. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you, Jesus, help to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on into our live chat questions. Up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Tightlines LSO, and also Kevin J. They said Morse code says Russia has abandoned Sevastopol mostly, and what are they even fighting for now? And long live the LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That is exactly what the Morse code message is tonight. And also, what are they fighting for? The whole war started in 2014 because the Russians wanted to annex Crimea and control the port of Sevastopol. Now that the Russian Black Sea Fleet isn't there, what's the point of the port? It doesn't mean anything to them now. So what's the point of the war? So with that, I hope that does address the Morse code well, and thank y'all for deciphering that on the 588th day of the war. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to James Bond, who says, when will USA resume its aid packages to Ukraine?
It will, we don't know exactly when, but it will have to be after the next 44 days from this point. So we will have to wait 44 days, and then it will probably be even longer than that, but I would expect probably about 60 days out from now at the minimum, at the best ideal circumstances. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another super chat, this time from Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says, I've been adding more to the board game that I mentioned last night. I don't know if Matt showed it to you, but I hope you like the concept of submarine fights. And Dark Warrior, I haven't had the chance to show it to him yet, but I did read the entire thing the other night, and it was definitely a cool board game. I must admit, though, I'm not a board game person, but from what I know about board games, it sounded pretty good to me. But I'll have to show it to Enforcer sometime. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for support, Dark Warrior 137. Sadly, he hadn't shown it to me. But, of course, I will be trying to look at it and read over it here tomorrow at law school because we got like a 5-hour gap in between classes tomorrow, which is horrendous. But still, I will try and look at it and take a look at and hopefully, by tomorrow, I will be able to make a statement about it on stream during the question segment right here. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Matthew, one second. Oh, thank you. Oh, my Lord. I was about to be like, what the hell is that? What the hell is even that? But thank you once again for the support, Dark Warrior. And I will make sure to take a look at the game. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next live chat.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, could this abandonment of Sevastopol give Ukraine forces a foothold on Crimea?
Possibly, it may, but the Special Forces landing is so small that it was probably only a temporary incursion, considering it was about from what we could tell, a 14-man group at the biggest. So I don't really think that we're going to be seeing anything major coming out of it. It was more so just a landing to once again show that Russian security of the peninsula had been compromised again, and to hopefully draw more Russian forces and resources towards the defense of the Crimean Peninsula from incursions by sea. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least from how I saw it, but there's many different ways to see it. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
This one goes to Tony Snedcore, who says, do the Ruskies have any air defense left in Sevastopol?
From what we understand, yes, but it's not really effective air defense. We understand that they're S-300s or S-400s, maybe even some Bukes and Tors as well, or some Pansirs. It could really be a mix of all of those. But it appears that they don't really do that well at intercepting air targets in the area, and there isn't really a good way for them to do that in the approaches to Sevastopol. It's very mountainous and hilly, so their firing lines are going to be very narrow. So once they pick it up on radar, and once it disappears behind the next hill line, they were only able to see it on radar, possibly lock onto it, and then it's already out of range for most of the air defenses in that area. And that may also be why Ukrainian drone and missile attacks do so well on Sevastopol, is because flying at low level, there's really no way for these anti-air systems to lock on long enough to be able to get off a shot and shoot down the incoming drones and missiles. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I think we're on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Terrence Custer, who says, Enforcer, are the new Ruski ports out of range for the ATACMS?
They are out of range for the ATACMS. Sevastopol was also out of range for the ATACMS as well. The ATACMS only have a range of about 150 miles, so it's probably going to be used against the Russian army rather than the Navy until way later on in the war when the Ukrainians make it into Crimea. Then it might get used against the Navy, but for now, it probably never will be. The new port is certainly out of range of the ATACMS, and not just that. Most importantly, it's out of range of the Storm Shadows and the Scalp EG missiles that the French and British sent. This thing is literally right at the very maximum distance of the Storm Shadow. And so the chances of the Russian fleet being hit inside of Novorossiysk by a Storm Shadow, which is probably the biggest threat to the Russian Navy right now, is slim to none at the moment until we see that disproven. And so with that, I hope that does address that further well. And by the way, when I say that, I'm not saying that the Russian fleet is perfectly safe in Novorossiysk. I'm saying until it's proven. From what we understand, they are safe for now. But we don't know if the Ukrainians are going to do anything crazy or anything bizarre that is going to be able to launch a successful attack on Novorossiysk. That we don't know, and we're going to have to wait and see if that is the case. And one thing I have to say before we round out tonight's stream tonight is never make statements of opinion like that. That's largely an opinion of mine. It's not a fact. It's nothing that's been proven or disproven at this moment. It's an opinion. Never say them with hardcore truth. That's always why I tell y'all in my opinion, and that's what I think after I give an answer to every single one of y'all's questions. Because I think it's very conceited to give an answer to something and act like that's it. Like to just, walk up to a random person and say, no, you're wrong. Why are they wrong? I mean, if it's an opinion, how in the world can they be wrong? It's just a matter of opinion. There can be disagreeing opinions, and one could be right and one could be wrong, but none of them have been proven or disproven at this moment. So why in the world act like that? And that's something I think is a very big takeaway, especially from this war, is that many people like to act like they know everything. And sometimes we do that too. We're of course not, innocent of that. We have done that several times too, and we have been wrong. But nevertheless, always make sure when you talk about things, especially stuff like this, never say things in absolutes. Because for a long time, we thought that the Black Sea Fleet was perfectly safe in Sevastopol. And if anyone had said anything about an attack there, someone could have easily said, no, it will never happen. And then it did. And right now, a lot of people are going to say, no, the Black Sea Fleet will never be attacked in Novorossiysk until it is. So never say anything is a definite. Anything can happen. And you never know. And, the future is very weird in this war. And we've seen things happen that we would have never imagined over about the past 2 years of it. And so with that, I hope that does give y'all a little bit of a word of wisdom to go off with tonight. And who the hell am I to tell y'all a word of wisdom? Most of y'all are probably older than me. I'm only 21. But that's something I saw a little bit earlier today, and it's always important to remember. Don't say anything in absolutes when it comes to war analysis. Say it as an opinion. Say it with a caveat, because it may end up being wrong. Who knows? But still, with that, good night. Good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army never dies.
And good night, folks. Thank you all for another great stream, and be sure to join us tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its